Happy Friday! Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to have you with us for the next 3 hours or so. You are staying all 3 hours, right? Right? If you're tuned in now, you're going to...
Everybody does, OC.
That's what the numbers tell us.
They get out of their car, they open up the app, they hit play, they stream us.
That's right.
Or they get into their office, they go to ESPN700sports.com, they hit listen live, they stream us. Like doing chores around the house, they say play ESPN 700 on their smart speaker.
They just yell at their smart speaker, play ESPN 700.
Everyone's listening all the time, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We do appreciate that. Bill Riley's going to join us in 30 minutes. Looking forward to the conversation with the voice of the Utes. Brenda Van Langen, not going to lie, we expected we'd be talking about a Utah win.
Man, how wild was that last night?
Utah women's basketball dropping a game in the Big 12 tournament, eliminating themselves. Texas Tech, 14 seed.
They're one game over 500 now, so the 500 team. Yeah, just sub 40% from the field for Utah women last night. Yeah. Just a rough night.
Kennedy McQueen could not get a single thing going. Just was a really rough night. But we will have a conversation with Brenda Van Langen, who was on the call for Utah women's basketball last night. Some NFL news as big-time stars are requesting trades. The San Francisco 49ers have allegedly extended an offer to Brock Purdy. We'll get to all of it. And then the NHL trade deadline hits at 1 Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 Mountain. Tom Callahan, Puck Lake City playoff push. Utah Hockey Club insider Tom Callahan is going to join us. We'll talk about look, so far the Utah Hockey Club has stuck with what Bill Armstrong had to say early in the week, and everyone's staying together. In fact, instead of trading people this week, they've extended people this week. That does not mean that in these next couple hours, something crazy involving Utah Hockey Club players, even guys that were extended, could still happen. I'm not expecting it to happen, but it could still happen.
I'm laughing because I just saw your tweet.
You just saw the question I put out on Twitter?
The question is put out.
I think it's a good one because everyone has these like quirky interests in sports, right? James inspired me when he walked into the studio this morning, and he's wearing a North Carolina number 50 jersey. Now, James likes a good jersey, Jersey James on Twitter. He does wear a lot of jerseys. He's got a good collection of jerseys,
and not all of them are teams I'm fans of. They're just great players.
Yeah, sometimes
this one it happens to be one,
and that's fine.
But yeah,
he's wearing a Tyler Hansbrough jersey today. Psycho T,
baby.
It's kind of an obscure player to love.
Carolina
or to wear the jersey.
Carolina Duke tomorrow, big one.
Okay,
and Carolina on the bubble.
Okay. So seasonally appropriate.
But the player at the time, not a random guy to have a jersey of. But now with time passing, how he had an obscure NBA career, kind of random.
I'm gonna say that even when he was a big star at North Carolina, kind of random for a
you would have thought that
for a dude in Utah to have.
Oh yeah, a dude in Utah. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Right.
I'm not making fun of it because I have a couple of these. We all have these. So I just wanted to know for people out there, 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports on Twitter, the random guy that you're a fan of or the random gal that you're a fan of. That most people would never buy that jersey, but you're like, you know what? Like James, I have somewhere deep in one of my like extra closets, like storage room type closet, I have a Serge Ibaka jersey somewhere.
Do you? Thunder?
I loved me some Serge Ibaka when he was with the Thunder.
Yeah.
Just loved the way he played, defensive specialist for the most part.
What he almost had 4 blocks a game one of those years.
Loved
it was like 3.7 blocks a game. He was amazing. And he developed that 3-point shot, which made him even more likable because he could do something on offense too. Yeah.
And my parents live in Oklahoma, right?
Oh, okay.
Moved there after I graduated college. My dad's job took him out there, whatever. So my parents live in Tulsa. They live in Oklahoma. And obviously the Thunder are a big deal, right?
Absolutely.
And randomly my mom was just like, there's a bunch of Thunder jerseys on sale. It's 50% off. Who's your favorite Thunder player? And I was like, oh, get me a Serge Ibaka jersey. I love that guy. And
Power Surge. Wasn't that a nickname they tried to give him at the time? Power
maybe.
Surge.
So
he was awesome. I think almost everybody wishes that Thunder team, that core, had stayed together with James Harden, KD, Russell Westbrook, and then Serge Ibaka developed too as their best role player probably. But yeah, I think about that. I think about that quite a bit because that was a fun Thunder team. That was a fun team to watch in the NBA, and Serge was a big part of that.
So that one is probably mine. When I was younger,
a good random jersey.
This one not as random. I was a huge Alonzo Mourning guy.
Oh yeah,
like he was an all-star though.
To what you were saying though, maybe random for a guy in Utah to wear.
Random for a guy in Utah.
But yeah.
So
I loved Alonzo Mourning.
I've got an Alonzo Mourning Charlotte Hornets jersey somewhere.
Oh, the Hornets one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like obscure Alonzo Mourning, pre-Miami Heat even Alonzo Mourning. Anyway.
Pre-Heat culture.
877-353-0700 for your random ones. At Reload C Sports, you can answer it on Twitter as well. That's not where we're going to start the show today. There are a lot of things going on in sports, but I cannot avoid this. This is front of mind. This is something that it just almost hurts me. I don't like when the personalities in media become the story in media. But I'm going to give you a list, and you're going to guess for me what this is a list of, okay? All of you out there listening, while you're in your car, while you're streaming us as you vacuum with the AirPods in, whatever it is, okay? I'm going to give you a list of athletes in pro sports right now, and they all have something in common. Try to figure out what that thing they have in common is as I list off these names. Okay, first of all, every single coach in every single league fits on this list. Everybody. There's not one coach. The best one in the NBA, whoever you think that is, the best one in the NFL, whoever you think that is, the best college coach out there right now, the best NHL coach, the best baseball manager, they all belong on this list, okay?
You mean Bear Torney when you say best NHL coach?
Also, every single NHL player right now is on this list. Derrick Henry's on this list. Christian McCaffrey is on this list. I'm just going to go through the NFL guys real quick for you. 4 of the top 5 sack leaders in the NFL this past season. Trey Hendrickson, Kyle Van Noy, Danielle Hunter, Nick Bonito. The only one not on this list is Myles Garrett, who is number 2 in sacks in the NFL this year. Zaire Franklin and everybody else on the top tackles leader list in the NFL right now.
Okay, this is getting absurd, OC.
Kirby Joseph, interceptions leader in the NFL this year. He belongs on the list. Jahmyr Gibbs, 5 of 7 of the top touchdown scorers in the NFL all belong on this list. Dan Lanning just got a raise of $2 million. He's still on the list. Jordan Clarkson's on the list. Fred Warner's on the list. Every Ute in the NFL right now, every former Ute in the NFL right now, with the exception of Garrett Bowles, is on this list. They all have one thing in common. Do you know what that is, James Peterson?
They all have something to do with pro sports. Or
Lou Dort, who might win Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
He's on the list. No guesses as to what they have in common? I'll tell you what they have in common.
Okay.
And I'm getting loud, just like the guy who inspired the story.
Okay, I think I'm...
Every one of these players that I just mentioned, every coach in every league, in every conference, in every sport, is making less money to do their job next year than Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, yeah, he did get a raise this week, didn't he? That's insane.
Allegedly, Stephen A. Smith extended for 5 years at ESPN for a deal worth at least $100 million.
Oh, my God.
That is absolutely bananas.
So that's $20 million a year.
On average.
At least.
At least.
Oh, my gosh.
For Stephen A. Smith. Now, I'm not just a hater for the sake of being a hater. Not on Stephen A. at least. Sometimes I listen to what he has to say, and I'm like, oh, that was a great point. Sometimes I listen to what he has to say, and I'm like, oh, yep, he's just getting loud for the sake of being loud. He wants a clip to go viral. He doesn't even really care about what he's saying right now. I don't like how he always inserts himself into the story. That's something like I'm not a big J journalist, but that's something that journalists are not supposed to do.
It's ridiculous. The amount of the worst ones is whenever the Knicks have a big game and they gotta either show him walking out of the tunnel like they did in the playoffs before the playoff games last year, or they have to get him on NBA Today or NBA Countdown giving his take on a Knicks game where he's spouting we's and us's all over the place like he's not a professional media guy paid to cover this team. Like the insertion of himself and ESPN's enabling him to insert himself into every story, especially if it's a Knicks story, is nauseating.
So ESPN decided that they were overpaying their $500 million a year for Major League Baseball. And they're just like, you know what? We'd rather spend that money on Stephen A. Smith.
Okay.
I don't understand the appeal. I'm not just trying to be a hater for the sake of being a hater. I put a poll question out there because it's important when you're like not necessarily attached to the taste makers, when you're getting old like I am and maybe you're falling out of touch with what matters and what's important and what's exciting to people. I put a poll out there. Where does Stephen A. Smith rank for you in terms of top sports media personalities? Number one. Right now, James, 1% of people responding say that he's the number one guy in sports media. Now, we know he's the number one guy pay-wise in sports media, but I'm talking about your taste as a sports fan.
And probably in everyone's consciousness, he might be number one. But, yeah, you're right. In your taste, how much do you like him?
9% say he's in the top 5, 7.7% say he's in the top 10. 82% of people who listen to this show and are responding to this poll say they just don't like Stephen A. Smith. And maybe that's a reason you watch him. I'm not a hate watcher. I'm not someone who spends my time, energy tuning into something for the sake of not liking it. Even the guilty pleasure shows that I used to watch, like that I acknowledge were a train wreck and were an absolute disaster and were a total waste of time. Those things I didn't watch because I hated it. I enjoyed watching people cry on The Bachelor. Like, I don't know why. But anyway, Stephen A. Smith makes more money to be a guy talking about sports than all of those individuals I mentioned, than every single NHL player, every single coach at the top level of every league.
That is so many people.
Potential defensive player of the year in the NBA, an uncounted number of Major League Baseball players, aside from the upper crust stars. And honestly, the number of guys in the NFL below that $20 million a year number is shocking, including guys that are really dang good. I mean, I just told you Fred Warner, who's arguably the best linebacker in the league. I didn't mention Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner's he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bobby Wagner has been one of the best linebackers in the NFL for a decade plus. Okay. Kyle Van Noy, same thing, has been incredible every stop he's been at. He was 4th in the league in sacks this year, despite the fact that he's 35 years old now. Kyle Van Noy's making like a 7th of what Stephen A. Smith is making.
And he's a guy, I don't think he's first ballot, but Kyle Van Noy's definitely a guy you could make a Hall of Fame case for.
I mean, he's an important part on Super Bowl defenses.
Super Bowl teams, and he just keeps playing and keeps being effective on really good teams. He hasn't won a Super Bowl in a minute, but he's been on really good teams, keep signing him because he's still super productive. Like he's got a Hall of Fame case too.
And here's the thing. I admire that Stephen A. Smith and anyone in the business can make themselves this valuable or perceived to be this valuable in the business.
Absolutely. I don't hate on his success at all.
Like I don't understand. And I also think you don't have to pay Stephen A. Smith this kind of money.
No.
I just don't like.
I mean, clearly he and his agent saw a way to leverage more money, but he probably would continue. Like, what was he at, $5-10 million a year before?
Yeah, I think he was at $10 million a year,
which is a lot, which is still higher than a lot of the guys that you listed.
Yeah, it's still like 80% of the NHL.
So he he probably would have been satisfied doing that for a long time, but that's not how capitalism works. That's not how contract negotiations work.
Well, the other thing about it, right, and I know that ESPN, like every entertainment entity right now and every network right now, including our own, you're trying to figure out a way to differentiate yourself, and you're trying to figure out a way to maximize revenue, and you're trying to figure out a way to be sustainable and have some longevity, as people have an unimaginable multitude of options. Like, I can't tell you how many times, you all know this, you tune in, you turn on a game, and then you watch like 4% of that game because you're scrolling through your Instagram stories instead. There's just so many things vying for your attention. And maybe that's why somebody like Stephen A. Smith is worth this kind of money. Maybe because he demands attention. Maybe that's why Tom Brady is worth $37 million a year, because even if he's not the best at doing the job, not yet anyway, he just demands attention.
Yeah, his name, his reputation demands that attention right now.
I still maintain, and I don't like saying this because I'm now also a play-by-play guy, and I want to continue to have play-by-play opportunities. I want to continue to build my resume, and that I still don't know how many people there are out there in the sports world that you're going to turn on the TV because they are the ones on the TV. Stephen A. Smith is not that for me. Tom Brady is not that for me. Pat McAfee is barely that for me.
Yeah.
Scott Van Pelt is that for me because I like Scott Van Pelt. Dan Patrick is that for me, although I prefer listening to Dan and not watching Dan.
Yeah, Dan Patrick falls in that category for a lot of people because you can stream the show on Peacock. So, yeah, Dan Patrick's a good one.
But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of sports personalities. And I know you love Inside the NBA back in the headlines because Charles Barkley is just going off and doing his thing, and there's a feud with him and Kendrick Perkins and all that stuff, and that's great. So those guys,
the Charles Barkley and the poor man's Charles Barkley feuding. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Charles Barkley and Walmart price Charles Barkley are now feuding.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But how many times are you going to tune into a game because of who's calling the game? How many times are you going to turn on your television to know a reaction to something because you know it's that person reacting? That's why this is such a wild thing for me. Like, to me in sports, the sports are still the story. And I know it's getting away from that for some people. The entertainment value matters more, and we're guilty of this. Like, we lean into contract discussions and the offseason drama and the trade demands and things like that. But the sports are still the story for me. Like, who's winning? And, yeah, I do want to know the breakdown on who's winning. I do want somebody to tell me why, that pitch got past that guy and caused that strikeout that caused this series to go this way. I still want that, but I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I only care who it is if the person is bad.
Yeah.
Right?
As long as they're not bad.
As long as they're not bad.
Yeah,
when it's someone who sucks, then we're just like, this is terrible. If it's someone who's good, it doesn't matter who it is for the most part.
Yeah. I admire certain people more than others, but I'm with you. The Super Bowl, it doesn't matter who's calling the Super Bowl. Like, I'm watching, I got the sound up because I want the whole game experience, right? And playoff games, whatever. Just don't be bad. Like, get your pronunciations right. have the facts about your team right. Yeah, like it's a low bar that we need to clear for guys.
Anyway,
but that all being said, like, love Kevin Harlan probably more than anyone else. Love Gus Johnson on a college football game probably more than anyone else, but they're not the draw for me.
An announcer, a sports analyst, I think can add to your experience. A bad one can certainly subtract significantly from your experience. And I'm conflicted at even saying this, but like, there's nobody in sports media worth $20 million a year.
Yeah, I don't.
There just is. I wish I was this popular. I wish I made this kind of money. I wish I was that important.
We'd take the $20 million, but
But
I don't think there's no one that's
nothing
worth
that can
that.
justify a network being like, we need to pay that guy $20 million a year. Because what would happen to ESPN if you took Stephen A. Smith off, right? If you took Derrick Henry off the Ravens this year, that's a significantly different year. If you took Christian McCaffrey off the 49ers this year, you did. And guess what happened? Like, they weren't that good, right?
Yeah, injuries took him off this year.
Injuries took him off,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you took Lou Dort off of Oklahoma City this year, are they still the number one team in the West? Probably not. I mean, maybe so, but probably not.
They're probably a contender still,
They're
probably
still
not
a playoff team, certainly.
They're up. They're up by like however many games, 7-8 games in the standings. Like he's contributing to that for sure.
If you took every NHL player off the ice, obviously. So the reason I say that is because those figures, the money that these guys make, I can justify that. If you take Kyle Whittingham away from the University of Utah, you save $6 million, but now you better hope that Morgan Scally is the guy you think he is. If you take Dan Lanning away from the Oregon Ducks, he's making $11 million a year after the raise that was announced yesterday. If you take him away from the Oregon Ducks, well, guess what? Oregon's still a good team. There's someone there that can replace him, but we've seen what that looks like. We've seen what Oregon is without someone who is the recruiter that Dan Lanning is. And Oregon is like a top 25 team. They're not a top 2 team. They're not an undefeated in the regular season team.
Undefeated and then get blown out in the Rose Bowl team.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can take your victory lap. But even you have to acknowledge that Dan Lanning is a...
Yes.
Like, when Dan Lanning gets a $2 million raise, you're just like, yeah, that makes sense.
What's crazy about that, I didn't realize he's up to $11 million now. I think the only ones making over 10 in college football are ones besides him are guys who've won national championships.
Guys who've won national championships,
right?
Yes.
I mean, he's a fantastic coach, but that's interesting that he is in that realm of things when he hasn't won a national championship.
Yeah, it is interesting, but also there's no alternative. If you take him away,
they're
like
way
your
worse.
program is much worse off. ESPN clearly believes if you take away Stephen A. Smith, they're much worse off. I dispute that.
Yeah,
you still have a lot of the same programming. You still have people that I want to see talk about it, people I want to see debate about it, or not. It doesn't change things a lot. Like, these two guys debating, I'll flip to the next channel. Stephen A. doesn't keep me there. Stephen A. doesn't draw me there. I know I'm not the entire cross-section and sample size of the United States, but I just, when you talk about replacement cost for somebody that is making this kind of money, there's a reason why these NFL quarterbacks have to make $50 million a year, because the replacement cost, oh my gosh, what's it going to take to get us another Patrick Mahomes, who, by the way, doesn't make $50 million a year. What's it going to take to get us another Patrick Mahomes? Unimaginable. Pay him whatever he wants, right? The San Francisco 49ers allegedly have offered Brock Purdy a deal worth the average value of $45 million a year. That does not put him near the top. Puts him near the top. Doesn't put him at the top. It doesn't put him in that elite number 1 class of paid quarterbacks. And that, I think, is a good move. Yeah. I think that's the smart move.
Savvy move by them. That number still seems insane,
especially
how big it is.
He's been making $1 million a year, basically.
But the cap's gone way up, so it's not the top of the league money,
and it's not the percentage chunk that you think it is, right? I mean, Dak Prescott and some of these guys, and Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are all making more money than that, and I think that's fine, right? If I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I can go to Brock Purdy and his camp, and I can say, look, we really like you. We love you, in fact, but we are not going to hamstring the future of our franchise and give you 40% of our salary, of our cap, because then there won't be anything around you.
Especially because we just traded Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and by the way, dude, like, you're getting a 45x raise over what you made last year. Like, you don't and this is where the Patrick Mahomes deal is so fantastic for everyone else in the league, is you could say, do you think you're worth that much more than Patrick Mahomes is?
Yeah.
Because nobody can stand on that leg. Yeah. So it's wild to me. Congratulations to Stephen A. Smith. How many of you are not going to watch if Stephen A. Smith is gone? How many of you are going to watch just because he is there? I just don't think that the answer to those questions is compelling enough to give you $20 million a year as a salary.
And you think about this in the larger context of things at ESPN, in the last 3 years, they've laid off more than half of their personalities.
I can't imagine how sick to your stomach you feel if you're someone who is making like $500,000 a year to be a Sports Center host, and that's probably your dream job, and you're just like, I love this gig. I will do anything I can to keep this gig, and it's like, sorry, you make too much money. You're cut. And then you see someone who doesn't do it that much better than you, quite frankly.
He's loud and gets lots of attention because he's loud.
You could now, like, they could give 40 people your salary for what you're paying him, one person.
I hadn't even really considered the amount of layoffs they've had recently juxtaposed to this till just now. But yeah, that's also another reason why this feels completely unnecessary. And honestly, it feels like a bad look to do this. But hey, they're pushing all their eggs into the Stephen A. basket. They think he's that valuable, whatever.
And I know he's an incredibly hardworking guy. I mean, one thing that you have to give him credit for was Stephen A. Like, I don't know what kind of personal life he's got. I don't know what kind of family life he's got because
his upbringing, nothing. I don't know anything about that.
He's on TV every segment of the day, and then you tune into an NBA game or you tune into an NFL game, and he's there also. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Does this guy – it's like Andrea Urban. He's everywhere.
Pay her $20 million. Come on, Fox 13.
And by the way, all you kids out there listening, I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. One of the worst things you can do as a human being is count somebody else's money.
Yeah.
Is think about, like, what that person has that you don't or how – that's not really the lens I want to put on this thing. It's more just like astonishment that somebody who sits at a desk and yells about the sport is deemed to be more valuable than the people who coach it, than a lot of the people who play it, and in the case of hockey, than every person who plays it. Like, Stephen A. Smith is going to make more money than every mixed martial arts fighter on the planet this year.
That's sport too. Yeah.
He's going to make more money.
Hockey.
He's going to make more money than all but like a dozen boxers on the planet this year. And for the next 5 years.
More than any tennis player for their actual play earnings.
Yeah,
like lots of them get in. There's a handful that get great endorsements that probably make more than $20 million a year. But like the tennis is decimated. Golf for the actual purse earnings they get for every tournament. Yeah. I mean, this is way more than any of that.
So good for you. But I feel like we've lost the plot a little bit in what we value with our sports when somebody, and I wish that my upward mobility could take me to a number like this, but if I'm cashing a check like that to do this job, which is effectively what he does, I am giggling all the way to the bank. And I'm just like, these people are morons because I would do this for $100,000. You know what I mean? Like, Stephen A., if you really got it the true serum in him, like, what's the minimum salary you would take? It's probably like $1 million.
Yeah.
Anyway.
A fraction of this. I mean, yeah, seriously, good for him. And honestly, I'm not a total hater of Stephen A. Smith. I don't like certain things about him. I'm not a fan of First Take. But I don't hate everything about him on other shows, the NBA Countdown, whatever. It's just there's people that do it that I like better than
One of
him.
my
There's
biggest
plenty of people I like better than him. It's crazy. ESPN thinks he's that valuable.
One of my biggest complaints about Stephen A. Smith is actually not his fault at all. It's that ESPN shoehorns him into every event.
Yes.
It's that when there is like a Jake Paul boxing event, they feel like we need to hear his opinion on it. He doesn't know the fight game very well.
Yeah.
He yells about it just as loud as anyone else does, but he doesn't know the fight game. And they do it with Conor McGregor fights. They do it with any MMA large event. And it's unfair to him, honestly. But he's like, whatever, I'm making a lot of money. Yeah. That's an ESPN problem, not a Stephen A. problem. Anyway, it's just weird, man. It's crazy. So everyone out there, and whatever your job is, just go get your money. Do as much as you can to make yourself this valuable, even if you're not actually that valuable. You know what is valuable, though? Having a guy, having someone you can trust with everything under the roof. Snow again, more rain coming. Put this number in your phone, 801-839-4501. 801-839-4501. Top Local Roofing, our friend Justin Cunningham joining us as a partner on the show, certified by the Better Business Bureau, working all up and down the Wasatch Front. If you need small roof repairs, they've got you covered. A full roof replacement, they've got you covered. Maybe you're building some new construction, you're adding something onto the house, you're putting a detached garage in the back, you're going to need a roof for that. Top Local Roofing, 801-839-4501. Tell them OC sent you. Quick break here, then we come back with the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. One more regular season game for Utah basketball, and it happens to be a big one. We'll talk about all of that with Bill next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
On the right side, Freelon catching. Looking for Sanogo. The ball's deflected and stolen away by Kennedy. 2-on-1 fast break. McQueen up top to Reese. Lefty layup up good, plus the foul.
There was a Reese Ross and one off a steal by Kennedy McQueen. Last night's game ended up as a 75-64 loss for Utah women's basketball. That means they're out of action for another couple of weeks until the NCAA tournament. We'll see what plays out with Selection Sunday. That's sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Tyson Ewing on the call does a great job as always. Utah eliminated from the Big 12 tournament with that loss. Bill Riley joins us now, the voice of the Utes on the men's side of things. He'll be calling a game as Utah finishes their regular season against the red-hot BYU Cougars in Provo. Bill, welcome to the show. How are you?
Sean, I'm great. How are you?
Awesome. How much are you looking forward to a trip down to the Marriott Center, which is always a fun atmosphere, even if you're on the wrong side of the color line, at least for the local fans?
Well, not always a fun trip, but it can be a fun trip. No, I think it'll be fun tomorrow night because it'll be senior night, rivalry game, full house. Utah won the first meeting, so I think there'll be a lot of energy and emotion and everything else in the game tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to it.
Will you effort yourself a special flavor royal blueberry Cougar
I will
tail?
not. I will not.
Okay.
I will not. I hate maple, so I would never get a maple one. But I will not be fancying myself a cougar tail. Are you a cougar tail guy?
Look, I love maple bar donuts, so that's right up my alley.
Gross.
Yeah, that's maple is my up there with coconut as my favorite artificial flavor. So, yeah, we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum here.
Would you eat a maple Jolly Rancher if they made one?
Heck yeah, I would. Wait, do you know something? Are they out there?
No, I bet they have them in Canada, though. But they're probably going to be taxed at a really high rate if you want to get them now. So probably not affordable to eat those maple Jolly Ranchers these days.
Oh, that's probably the case. We were talking. We had Mason Madsen on the show yesterday, and we've talked with you throughout the season. We talked with Sean Mooney throughout the season. We've had some players and coaches on, and I know it's not the year that Utah men's basketball hoped it would be. But this team is still playing really hard, and I got to admire at least the effort and the continual fight in a team, despite the disappointment and the fact that their head coach has been separated from his duties now. And we'll get to the replacement here in just a second. But you've been closer to this team than any of us have. What does it say about this group of guys that they continue to fight the way they do?
Oh, they like each other. I mean, that was pretty evident from the start, and that's weird because they had really, because I was, with the new job up here, I'm right next door to the basketball facility. I'm in the Huntsman Center for my office. So I was able to go over and watch, when they play open gym stuff and some of the summer workouts, nearly fall workouts. And the one thing I noticed, despite, a ton of new faces on the team this year was, there's pretty good camaraderie with the group. And Sean, you played enough organized sports to know when guys get along and guys are just out there because they have to be together. And this was a really good group from the jump, and I think you've seen that this year. And it's really shown itself in some of the tough losses this year because, when you're not having maybe the season you want and you suffer some tough losses, especially in this day and age where guys are free agents and you're not going to be coming back, all that stuff, all the things that are in college athletics today, it can splinter a locker room, and you can see personalities and guys sulk. It's never been the case with this team. And it's really been evident the last, week and a half, almost 2 weeks since the change in leadership when Craig was let go, that these guys have, I was with them in Tucson a day and a half after the change was made, and they were upbeat. They were having fun. They played loose at Arizona, played well in the second half, not in the first half, but the second half, came home and beat ASU, had a tough loss the other night, but they played really hard. So it's a really good group of guys who like each other, and that's really important. And I think they like the coaches that are with them too, the assistant coaches, especially Josh Eilert, because they've played really hard from Josh over the last 3 games. So, yeah, you're right. It's not been the season they wanted, though. Some people could make the argument that when you're picked 16th in the preseason, and if the tournament, the scenarios are basically right now, they're going to be 10, 11, or 13 in all likelihood in the different scenarios. There's, a million games tomorrow that could play it out, but they're going to be, but that's, even if you end up as the 13 seed, you've still outperformed your preseason expectations. And I think that's a credit to these kids in the fact that they played really hard this year in a really good conference.
As you mentioned, Coach Eilert has had a solid impact. You hear the guys talk about even the speech that he gave. I know you didn't come here to play for me, but we're going to play hard. I'm here for you. You don't have to be here for me. He knows the situation he's in. Now that there's, an end in sight, so to speak, we hope that they have a fun postseason and maybe can make an improbable run through the Big 12 tournament, whatever. But the sample size is shrinking on his availability to show what he can be as a leader for this team and maybe set himself up for the future. The thought process of an interim coach going into this final stretch, what insight can you give me?
Well, I think people know Josh Eilert's been a coach, a Division I basketball coach for 18 years. So his resume is pretty good. They thought enough of him a year ago, and that was made in the summertime at West Virginia. It wasn't in season. They could have gone out and chosen a lot of people. They chose Josh Eilert at West Virginia, and I was there at the West Virginia game this year. He got a 60-second standing ovation from the fans this year at West Virginia. He spent 17 years there with Bob Huggins, but he took a really tough situation. They didn't have a great year, but he managed that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the administration here tabbed him to be the guy for the last 5 or 6 games. And so I think Josh, I don't think you read anything into. I mean, it'd be one thing if they were, you're dropping their heads and not playing hard. You might say, well, there might be not. I think they're playing hard for him. And if you watch the ASU game last Saturday, they'd come off the floor and they were hugging him, the seniors, the guys that were playing some time. So I think Josh has done a really good job in a really tough situation. There's no easy way to make a change in season, and there's no easy way to step in and do it because, as he said, Sean, none of those guys came to Utah to play for him. He joined the staff in May. So none of those guys, they committed to play for another head coach, but they like him enough to continue to bust their butts and play hard. So I don't know what his future is going to be. Maybe there's a chance that a guy like Alex Jensen, who I'm sure we'll talk about here in a minute, maybe you retain him. Maybe you keep him around. The positives are he knows the program because he's been in it here for a year. He knows, some of the players that potentially could return. And more than anything else, he knows the league. And I do think there's something to knowing the league and knowing the coaches and knowing the styles. You used to say personnel, but the personnel changes so much from year to year. That's not as important as knowing the venues and the coaching styles in the league. So, I think more than anything else, these coaches are, they're going to want to wind it down on a high note. But there's still probably an outside chance that some or one or whatever might be retained. So. We'll see what happens.
Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Our conversation with Bill brought to you every week by our friends at Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100 for $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Let's talk about Alex Jensen. They targeted him early on in the process, and I think it's a great sign for Utah athletics and for basketball specifically that they got the guy that they wanted, the number one target in the first place. Your thoughts, your overarching thoughts on Alex Jensen as the next head coach for Utah men's basketball?
He checks every box, Sean. He checks. The only downside, if you're looking for that, is he hasn't coached collegiately in 18 years. That's it. I mean, and the college landscape has changed a great deal, but he is a local. He knows the state. He grew up here. He played here. He was a star at Utah. He was an assistant coach. He was probably the most popular player of the head coach. I think Alex Jensen might have been the most beloved player that Rick Majerus ever coached. Not the best player, as evidenced by the fact he coached for 4 years with Rick at St. Louis. He has been a head coach in the G League, which was then the D League, and won Coach of the Year. He has been an NBA coach and well-thought-of NBA coach for more than a decade with the Jazz and now the Dallas Mavericks. If ever there were a time for Alex Jensen to make that step to be a head coach, come back to his alma mater, this is the time. And I think it's going to excite the fan base. I think it's going to excite the donors. I think that players will look at his resume and he can say, I helped coach Donovan Mitchell. I helped coach Rudy Gobert. I worked with Luka Doncic. He's got a pitch to players today that are on the roster, to players that you want to bring into the program. You want to get to the NBA? I can help you get to the NBA. Plus, he's got international experience, having played internationally and also coached with the German national team as well. So I just think, again, if you want to nitpick, well, yep, he hasn't been a head coach collegiately. Maybe you look at that, but everything else, it's such a easy transition. It's such an easy hire. It checks all the boxes. I just think it's, to use the old term, I think it's a home run hire. I do. And the interesting thing for me is I want to now that we've got Alex Jensen here, what's his staff look like? You've heard rumors about maybe some former teammates of his maybe joining the staff. You've heard, I'm curious to see how he fills his staff out now too, because that's, it's so important in collegiate athletics, in really at any level of athletics, to surround yourself with good people. And so I want to see what Alex does and who he brings in to fill out that staff.
Yeah, we're all, especially the Andre Miller name has been batted about to see if he'd be interested in being an assistant coach with Alex Jensen. If that can be made to work, obviously, from a fan perspective, it would be incredible. But we'll see how it plays out. What for me, and I've been talking about it since we thought this was a done deal, the equal positive here is that, yes, it makes perfect sense and it checks every box from the university's perspective, but you also have to campaign to a coach who's in a pretty good situation, who's in the NBA, and say, it makes sense for you to come here because we are going to give you the support you need. We are going to let you hire the assistants that you want. We are going to give you a good salary. This is a beautiful facility. That, to me, Bill, is equally as positive because I know Alex Jensen did not take this job blindly saying, like, NIL doesn't matter. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. The commitment from the university, from the donor base, whatever, had to be there to make this happen, and that signs that's a positive sign.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying. The hire excites the fans and the donors, and you're absolutely right. Alex is no different than any other coach. There are things that you need to be successful, especially in today's athletic setting and collegiate athletic setting. The basket, you usually want a facility. Well, they've got a world-class facility. NBA teams look at it and are in awe of it. They've got a great arena. It's aged, but it's still a great arena when it's full. The facilities here are fantastic. Now, in this day and age, you've got to have other things to be successful. And I think Alex, and I know, because they made the move when they did, the administration in athletics and really the university administration is saying, hey, what we've been doing has been okay, but we've got a high standard here at Utah. And we want to get back to where that standard has been for, Sean, this is still the 15th winningest program in the history of Division I college basketball. Despite not being to the NCAA tournament in 9 years, they're still the 15th winningest program of all time. And I think they want to get back to it, and there's no better link to it, too, than a guy that was part of the winning at the highest level, and that's Alex Jensen.
We're looking at an NFL draft coming up, and that pre-draft process is, like, in full swing. And we know that Junior Tafuna performed well at the Combine. Karene Reed looked great in the Senior Bowl practices. Brant Keithy, we haven't seen what his athleticism is going to translate to post-injury because he's still in that recovery process. Bill, I looked at most of the mock drafts because I'm a glutton for punishment that way. The Big 12 has like no representation at the top of this draft. It's two guys from Colorado and it's one guy from Arizona and T-Mac. And so it's like the Pac-12 was pretty heavily represented. But even that, three guys in the top round. How big a problem is that for the Big 12 moving forward?
It's a one-year sample size. If this is a trend that goes over the next 3 or 4 years, Sean, then it becomes a problem. But I don't think you lose your mind over 1 year. But that being said, we've seen what the SEC has done recently. They've added Oklahoma and Texas, and what the Big Ten did in adding the Oregon, Washington, SC, UCLA. That bolsters their talent base and adds, they've each got 18 teams in their league now. So they're always going to continue to do well. The Big 12, 16 teams now, you're going to have to step your game up just a little bit. We'll see what happens, but I'm not going to kind of overreact too much to a 1 year sample size. But if we're sitting here 3 years from now or 4 years from now saying the exact same thing, then if you're Brett Yormark and some of the football powers that be, you're kind of going, okay, what's going on here?
Apropos of nothing except the big contract news yesterday, are you a Stephen A. Smith guy?
I mean, I understand his role in the media landscape as an entertainer and a talking head, but I mean, I don't watch his show anymore. I'm in an office now without a TV in here, so I don't have it on too often.
$20 million per year. We went through a list of all the coaches, players, et cetera, that are massively important for their individual teams who don't even get that kind of dough. It's remarkable, the niche that he's carved out for himself. And, I'm jealous. It's just the way it works, though.
Well, I mean, nobody ever complains when Tom Cruise gets $25 million for a movie. I mean, it's if they didn't think that he could recoup it in some sort of way or it be monetized, I don't think they would give it to him. I mean, McAfee got something similar to that, a year ago or 2 years ago, didn't he?
Yeah, the McAfee, I never know how to process the numbers that are thrown around with him because he owns his content. And then, people buy it from him. I don't know, like, how much of that belongs to him. But yes, it's been incredibly lucrative for Pat McAfee as well. And he's been a great addition to Game Day, in my opinion. So let his revenue streams be what they are. It's fantastic.
Well, what I'll say about Stephen A. Smith is whether you like him, whether you don't like him, whether you think it's not as if he does he's everywhere, Sean.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
He is everywhere. He is on every NBA show. He is on every talking head show. He does a podcast. They Sports Center hits. I mean, yeah, he's making a lot of money, but they're squeezing every drop of every hour of every minute of every week out of Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He might be the hardest working man in all of sports. Speaking of hard working, our friends at Advanced Window Products are always working hard for their customers and their clients. They've helped you. They've helped me. They can help all of our ESPN 700 listeners.
Yep. You know my motto. When I was in the chair you're in for all those years, I always said support local. Buy local, eat local, drink local, support local businesses in our communities. And that's what Advanced Window is. 36, I think now 37 years they've been in our community, Sean, making windows, doing things, producing a great product for the people of Utah. And so I'm a big believer in local, but also local that does a good job. You don't just buy local because they're a local company. They've got to do good work too. And that's what they do. They've done great work at my house, window treatments and all kinds of things at my home. I cannot recommend them high enough. And the best part is they back it up with a lifetime warranty, whether it's windows, window treatments, door stuff, all of it is covered by a lifetime warranty. So even if you're only in your house for a couple of years and then you move on, it adds to the value of your house, and whoever buys that house from you is going to get that lifetime warranty on the windows as well. So Nate Orchard, our friend, the former mayor of Sac Lake City, Jake Weber, Dave Orchard, Janitha and her crew, they are fantastic people who put out a great product, and I cannot recommend them high enough. It's Advanced Window Products. What's the phone number?
801-850-9100, $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Bill, always a pleasure. Have a great call tomorrow. And you know what? Just do it. Grab a Royal Blueberry Cougar Tail.
I'll bring it back for you. How's that?
Perfect. That's Bill Riley.
I'll leave it in the studio for you for Monday morning.
Love that. Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. He's the man. Appreciate his time every single week, every single Friday. You can hear him as Utah takes on BYU to close out the regular season. That BYU team is hottest in the country right now. But all things pointing in a positive direction for Utah basketball. They're still playing hard, and the program now has all the optimism attached with Alex Jensen being hired. All right, I got another email from the Big 12 Conference today, and it's about football. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll talk about it in 3 minutes. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Brenda Van Langen in about 5 minutes here, ESPN Plus announcer on the call for Utah women's basketball last night. We've got a PGA Tour leaderboard update from the Puerto Rico Open brought to you by Uinta Golf. The new TaylorMade QI35 woods are the 4th generation of carbon wood technology. A driver that unlocks a new level of distance is available now at Uinta Golf. Real quick, James, who's in the lead at the Puerto Rico Open?
Yes, Puerto Rico Open. Davis Riley is in the lead at 14 under. He's 6 under. He went 6 under for the day. He just finished up for the day. He's got a one-shot lead over Austin Cook, another fellow American. Chris Gotterup is right behind them at 12 under, tied for third. 4 Americans in the top 4 OC, 4 for 4 for the American side. Rasmus Neergaard Peterson, again, no relation, if anyone's curious about that. No relation to the great James Peterson. 11 under, tied with a bunch of people for 5th at 11 under. And then Jeremy Paul from Germany is one of those 5 as well. I always like to highlight Jeremy Paul because when you look up PGA in Google, it just says J. Paul. It's like, wait, Jake Paul's taking over golf too? No, it's Jeremy from Germany.
It's like that episode of The Simpsons where he didn't know what the J stood for, Homer J. Simpson.
Yeah.
And then it was J, J-A-Y.
Yeah, just J. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so there you go. That's your PGA Tour leaderboard update. High scoring or low scoring, I guess, at the Puerto Rico Open.
Okay, where do you stand on Friday college football games, James?
I wish they had better matchups. I'd be way more into it if they leaned into it more and put better matchups in there. Because football season, I mean, you got Friday, you got high school. If you're gonna go out and watch your local team, you got kids on the team, whatever. But if you don't, and those stadiums don't fit everybody, right? So
Sure.
not everyone can go out to the high school game. Might as well have some bigger matchups on Friday night in college football. So that's my only thing is that the matchups tend not to be very good.
The Big 12 announced their Football Friday selections.
Oh, okay.
Sent it in an email. August 29th, Georgia Tech, Colorado.
Yeah, not great.
Auburn, Baylor, also that same night.
That could end up being good.
Friday, September 12th, Colorado at Houston. September 12th, this may be a good one. Kansas State, Arizona.
Yeah, that could end up being a good one.
September 19th, Tulsa, Oklahoma State.
Yeah. In-state rivalry.
September 26th, I like this one, TCU, Arizona State.
Yeah, that should be good. Okay, so there's a couple of potentially good ones.
Yes. BYU will host West Virginia October 3rd in a Friday night game.
West Virginia depends on the year. They might end up being a pretty good team. Could be a good challenge for the Cougars that night.
Houston at UCF.
Yeah.
November 7th. Arizona at Arizona State. Territorial Cup. In-state rivalry. Gets a Black Friday placement. Like, hey, everyone, look at this. We're not going to make this game compete with the other games on rivalry weekend. We're going to put it on a Friday night, a slightly more advantageous broadcast position. I haven't looked up. They might be going up against NFL football at that moment.
Friday. That's usually in the daytime. Is at least
the NFL game is usually a daytime game? Yeah,
they've only had it
twice, right?
2 years, so they might end up saying, you know what, let's do it at night. But the past 2 years, it's been a midday start or later, afternoon start.
And of course, on rivalry weekend, you know that Utah's got Kansas.
Absolutely.
That Friday game that we're
red
all
versus blue. Utah, Kansas.
So yeah, those are the Friday Big 12 games. Here's the thing:
better selection of matchups than they typically have. I feel like
I enjoy a game that can kind of like give you something to look forward to on a Friday night. There's usually a good Thursday game.
Yeah,
like half the weeks at least. There's a good Thursday game. Friday has been a little bit weak. Friday having its own little spotlight game, that's fine. I know that some people are high school purists and people with kids in high school are just like, dude, I got to go watch my daughter cheer. I got to go watch my son play football. Like, okay, record the game. It's fine.
And if only big television networks consulted you about your schedule too. Jeez. Like,
no, I understand why people are like, come on, dude. Like, give me. But Utah, Kansas as the only Friday night game for the Utes. And it'll be Black Friday, finishing off your year.
Yeah, I don't hate that there's only one Friday game for Utah. It seems like Utah, in particular, in the Pac-12 years, had like 2 or 3 every season, and last year they had a couple. So yeah, just one is fine.
Almost guaranteed I'll be watching that game on a plane back from the Middle East because that's how the PFL decides that Black Friday is when we want to do our championships or whatever, and because of the time difference, our show will get over, and then when I'm at the airport, these games will be kicking off, and when I'm on the plane, the games will be gone. So, yay! All right, get to some Utah women's basketball, some Big 12 women's basketball with Brenda Van Langen, who's kind enough to join us after a night of calling basketball, and she's got more to do at the Big 12 basketball tournament on the women's side. Brenda next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Neepkin's going to try to make something happen in traffic. She's going through 2 defenders. She scores it and is fouled. That is just sheer grit and determination from Gianna Neepkins.
Gianna Neepkins and won in the last night's Big 12 tournament loss for Utah women's basketball. That sound courtesy of ESPN. Brenda Van Langen on the call. Don't need to add syllables to her name. ESPN Plus announcer who maybe was just as surprised as we were to see Utah women's basketball not really get going the way they needed to, and ended up losing to the 14 seed Texas Tech 75-64 in the second round of the Big 12 tournament down there in Kansas City, which means they are out and will now wait for Selection Sunday to see where they end up in March Madness. Of course, that seeding could potentially be adversely affected by the lackluster performance in the NCAA or in the Big 12 tournament. So, not what you thought was going to happen, not what you hoped for from the Utah women. They will have to reset and get themselves ready. As I already mentioned, the announcer on the call last night, Brenda Van Langen, kind enough to give us some time today, recapping what we saw last night and looking forward to the rest of this women's basketball tournament in the Big 12. Brenda, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. The tournament slate for you. How many games do you have today?
I'll have the evening games tonight of the quarterfinals, so just getting ready for that. And it's been this is the third day in a row with a couple of games, so it's always a fun time of year to do these Big 12 tournament games. It's
do you have a special routine for these games that differs from your normal routine, given that they're back-to-back nights?
Well, I always do a lot of preparation and homework. I don't get as much time when it's back-to-back to really look back on game film as much as I typically do. But, kind of I've seen these teams mostly throughout the season. And so just trying to, put as much information available at my fingertips as I can so that we're ready when the ball tips up.
Obviously not the result that we were hoping for as the home of the Utes last night. Kennedy McQueen unable to get going. Credit to Texas Tech. Played their way into the opportunity they've got, taking on they're up against number 3 Oklahoma later this evening. But were you surprised to see Utah have its struggles in this game?
Yeah, I definitely was. I think it was a matter of Texas Tech is on a little bit of a roll, and that happens at tournament time sometimes. They had a 9-game losing streak, Texas Tech, late in the season, but they were within single digits of most of those games. And so it felt like they could possibly go on a run, and I think Utah playing them after they had already gotten some momentum the night before by beating Kansas, and it was Utah's first game. I just felt like it took a bit for the Utes to get into it. They didn't shoot as well. They didn't defend as well as they typically do. I mean, Texas Tech shot 49% from the field and 50% from three-point range, 10 of 20. And I think that was the difference in the game, is just not being able to slow down the Texas Tech offense.
One thing that's been really evident when we've had Utah players on and coaches on this year, of course, it's Utah's first year in the Big 12 Conference. And I ask every player, because everyone has a different experience, hey, what's the change? How different is it playing in this conference versus in the Pac-12? And every single one of these ladies, every single one of the coaches has said, well, the Big 12, it's more physical. It's a little bit more of a rock fight. And especially you get to tournament time, and you saw that in the rebounding battle and things like that in this game. A little bit of a wake-up call potentially for Utah basketball on both sides, on the men's and women's sides, because this conference is really different. I suppose you're more familiar with that.
Yeah, I've been part of the Big 12 Conference since its inception almost 30 years ago. So, I've seen the ebbs and flows, the teams in and out and so forth. And, it's exciting to see Utah, Colorado, and Arizona State joining the Big 12 this year. But it is different. Pac-12, I think in the past was known for, kind of fluid offense and really pretty offense in a lot of way. And Utah, is in that category. I mean, to be able to make 10 3-pointers per game and to score like they have is really impressive. In the Big 12, there's kind of a variety of teams that you play against. And there are some that are more shooting-oriented, more three-point-oriented, but then you've got a lot with big post players inside that really can be physical. And I think when it's tournament time, none of the referees like to admit it, but I think they allow it to be more physical in postseason play. And, I think it makes it tough for teams that really like to pass and cut and move freely. I think it's just a little bit more difficult this time of year.
Brenda Van Langen, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, recapping Utah's loss and elimination from the Big 12 tournament last night at the hands of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And, of course, that means a longer layoff before Selection Sunday and a longer layoff before you get back into competition to finish out the year in March Madness. Now, they still will see their name called, I believe. Utah will. But where does it net out on rust versus rest? You thought you were going to have a deeper run at the very least in the Big 12 tournament, and now that idle time, How do you use it to your advantage at least?
I think it's that time of year when you need to get some rest and recover just from the long season and just all the travel that Utah and all the teams in various conferences have had to do this year with all the changes in conference realignment. But, sometimes when you have that loss, when you didn't play as well as you should have, you have a little bit of more of a burn getting ready for the NCAA tournament. So, I know this program, has had so much success this will be the fourth year in a row being in the NCAA tournament. And the thing I'm concerned about with Utah is that they were projected at probably a 7 seed previous to the loss to Texas Tech last night. And at least Charlie Cream, the prognosticator for ESPN, is saying they probably have dropped down to an 8 seed. We'll see what the committee says. But when you're in that 8-9 line, you're going to play the number 1 seed in your region, in the second round. So that always makes it tough. However, Utah has a lot of experience, a lot of talent, great shooters, and when you can shoot the ball like Utah does, you always have a chance. And, I think Toure has been really good this year as well defensively and playing inside. So, I think it's just over the next couple of weeks kind of resting, regrouping, and preparing for the NCAA tournament.
How do you foresee the rest of this Big 12 women's tournament playing out? I mean, there's a lot of really good teams in this field, and there are some surprises and some upstarts, Texas Tech being the one right now, obviously having beaten Utah.
Yeah, for sure. West Virginia just beat Kansas State in the 4-5 game, which came down to the last couple of possessions. Colorado and TCU play this afternoon. TCU won the regular season, first Big 12 championship ever. They have all those transfers that have come in the last couple of years and just have a lot of talent. I expect that they are the favorite. However, West Virginia has tough defense. They will challenge them in that top part of the bracket. And then, like you said, Texas Tech with that big win over Utah last night, they'll face Oklahoma State, who Oklahoma State has actually beaten all of the top 8 teams in the conference. Their losses, crazy enough, are to the lower seeded teams. But they've beaten everybody above them. And so they can rise to the occasion. So that Oklahoma State-Texas Tech game tonight is going to be really intriguing, I think. Texas Tech will be playing their third game in 3 days, and, how long will their legs hold out? We'll see. But they obviously played really well against Utah. And then in the other game, Iowa State-Baylor, those two teams have met in the quarterfinals in the Big 12 the last 2 years in a row, Iowa State winning both of those. But Baylor's the number 2 seed right now, and so we'll see. There's some really exciting games coming up. I'm looking forward to it. It's more up in the air than ever. Texas and Oklahoma were in the Big 12 in the past, and Texas won the final Big 12 title they were in last year, so no Texas around this year. So it'll be a new tournament champion this year. It'll be interesting to see how everything plays out.
However it plays out in the Big 12, we're right around the corner from March Madness and the women's tournament playing out there, and we just here in studio just finished watching South Carolina beat Vanderbilt in their conference tournament, and that team is really good again. When you look at how these Big 12 teams, no matter which way it plays out and how the seedings kind of net out, can the Big 12, one team at least, contend for a national championship this year?
It's an interesting question because I think there's a lot of talent. I think, teams like TCU and Baylor, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, I think they all have a chance, but it kind of, as always, I think it depends on matchups, where you get placed, who you end up meeting along the way. The Big 12 hasn't had anybody solidly in the top 8 in the country all year. TCU and Kansas State have been around that 8 or around that 9, 10, 11 spot most of the year. So, if you look at the performance all year long, I think there's a lot of teams that have a chance to make it to the Sweet 16 and possibly the Elite 8. I think it'll be harder to get a Big 12 team to the Final Four. However, it's March Madness, so anything can happen. Even a team like Utah beat Notre Dame earlier this year. So you never know with those particular matchups, which teams might get on a run. I've done this a long time. This is my 30th year of broadcasting, and I was on 2 years ago. Miami upset Indiana on their home court when they were a number 1 seed, and Miami made a run all the way to the Elite Eight. And before, you would never have predicted that. So I'm not going to say that no teams will make it to the Final Four or contend for a national championship in the Big 12, because it's certainly possible. They're kind of at that level that it's probably more likely that we're going to see a lot of Sweet 16 and Elite Eight probably finishes in the Big 12.
Brenda Van Lincoln for a couple more minutes here, ESPN announcer. She's on the Big 12 tournament right now. And as you said, 30 years in this business. Hopefully you're all right with me picking your brain a little bit on some of the big picture stuff that has happened in college sports. We spent countless hours discussing the effect of the transfer portal, the effect of NIL, and I don't know if it's made, like, for example, college football better. I don't know if it makes it a more digestible product. College basketball is a different animal, but, of course, dealing with some of the same things. The women's game seems to be thriving in a way that it never was before. Networks are paying it more respect. Fans are paying it more respect. We're seeing some of these athletes monetize their abilities and things like that in a way that quite frankly, a lot of us never thought was possible for women's basketball players in college. So, are we better off than we were when you started doing this thing 30 years ago, or is it problematic the way that the game is headed right now?
Wow, that's a loaded question a little bit, but definitely we are in a better place than 30 years ago. I mean, the growth of women's basketball has been incredible, and it's been amazing to see the last few years, especially how television audiences are really grabbing on, how there's sold out arenas, how there's so many great things going on. But there is the transfer portal that I think kind of throws things in a bit of a loop sometimes. You don't have the continuity with a lot of teams that we've had in the past. So, as a kind of an old school person, I guess, I miss that. I mean, when I do my games, I'm always like, okay, all right, this person wasn't on this team last year. What team were they on? And let me go back and look in my notes and see if I had them on another team. So, I mean, it takes away the continuity and kind of that ability to really embrace players for all 4 or 5 years when you do have those kind of players. I think community should really embrace that and enjoy it. And I know Utah has been a team like that has kept a lot of players around. So, I wish we didn't have quite so much of that. However, I understand if players are having an opportunity to go somewhere to enhance their life and create opportunities, I'm definitely supportive of that. And I just want to mention before we get away that I'm actually related to this subject. I'm working on a documentary series. I'm producing it. I've been working on it for about 4 years now. It's called If Not For Them, and it's if not for those that built the foundation in women's basketball back in the actually 50s, 60s, and 70s before the NCAA took over, we wouldn't have what we do today. And so I've interviewed over 100 people across the country that played or coached or were administrators back in those decades before the NCAA took over. And I have some really remarkable stories of how things really got started with women's college basketball and how it's impacted the growth that we now experience and enjoy in women's sports today.
Where can we find that?
Well, we're still in production, so it's not out on a network yet. However, you can follow us on social media or on our website as we're in production on the first 4 episodes, and so we hopefully will get out those first 4 episodes as a season 1 coming up sometime before the end of the year, hopefully sooner than later. But yeah, people should just follow us on social media. You can learn a little bit about what we're doing and when those shows will be coming out.
Okay, before we let you go, there's no Caitlin Clark this year in these tournaments, but there are some must-watch women. Who are they for you?
Juju Watkins at USC for sure. Betts at UCLA is having a terrific year as well. I like Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame. South Carolina is so balanced and deep, but they've got a young freshman named Joyce Edwards that is a future star. that is a really fun player to watch. Here within the Big 12, Haley Van Lith was the player of the year and worked so well with Sedona Prince. It'll be really exciting to see how they are able to make their way through the NCAA tournament. There's a lot of stars. I've covered Iowa over the past few years when Caitlin Clark was playing, and they've have recharged. They're doing well in the Big Ten tournament right now. So there's just if you get a chance to watch all these games, it's too bad they're all on at the same exact time, these conference tournaments. But there's a lot of great games right now, and it will help prepare everybody to get ready for the NCAA tournament coming up.
Brenda, appreciate you giving us some time today, especially while you're doing tournament duties. I know it's incredibly busy. We thought we'd be having you on after a Utah win, but great stuff despite the result last night. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate being invited on. And, I was hoping that we'd be talking about a Utah win, too. But best of luck as they go to the NCAA tournament. A lot of talent on that team.
That's Brenda Van Langen. You can hear her and watch her as the Big 12 tournament continues on ESPN+. In fact, right now you've got SEC tournament basketball on ESPN. You've got the Big 12 tournament playing out. This is the fun time of year where if you're looking for a basketball game to watch, maybe to bet on, you can find it. Lots left to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. Reminder to all of you out there, you can listen live. Of course, you're doing so right now. You can also find us at ESPN700sports.com. The ESPN 700 app is free on your preferred app store. You should download that if you have not already. You can find us on your smart speakers. Just tell it to play ESPN 700. What else? At ESPN 700 Sports Utah on YouTube. And, of course, you can find the show in podcast form on ESPN700sports.com. If you can't catch us live, just download it and find us in the on-demand section in the app as well. There's no excuse. You should be listening to everything. Great stuff from Brenda. Appreciate her giving us some time today. All right, let's get to some NFL news. Brock Purdy is $45 million a year, enough for him to stay with the San Francisco 49ers. Where's DK Metcalf going to end up? Plenty to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. Airing of grievances coming up in 1 hour. Get them ready. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. We're going to update you on the respective races that in-state teams are involved in. Utah Jazz tank race update coming up in our next segment. Utah Hockey Club playoff push, Puck Lake City playoff push update when we check in with Tom Callahan at the top of hour number 3. Utah Hockey Club beat Detroit Red Wings last night 4-2, so good news for them on that front. We'll get to it all in more detail as we are half an hour away from the NHL trade deadline. Utah Hockey Club still not part of any of those headlines, so that's good. In the NFL, we're deeply entrenched in the offseason. The pre-draft process is well underway, and now teams are trying to figure out what to do with their current rosters ahead of draft time. You want to have a pretty good sense of your team needs ahead of the draft. And needs are constantly evolving and changing based on who wants to be there and who doesn't. For example, the Washington Commanders, they just grabbed Deebo Samuel. They just re-signed Bobby Wagner. They're right now a place people want to go play. Everybody in the NFL looks and they see Jaden Daniels and a young quarterback who is right now on that rookie deal, which means he's playing at an exceptional bargain for the Commanders. All the veterans around the league are like, hey, I could go play there, win there, and cash in because their quarterback is not gobbling up 30% of the salary cap right now. This is a good situation for everybody. So the Commanders are benefiting from all this. DK Metcalf is one of the more impressive physical specimens and consistent performers in the National Football League. DK Metcalf is now seeking a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. Doesn't want to be there anymore. That's unfortunate if you're a Seahawks fan. He's a very likable player. Obviously, he's one of like 6 dudes probably I look at in the NFL that could play any assortment of positions. If he had decided when he was 13 years old he wanted to be an outside linebacker, he'd been an outside linebacker in the NFL. If he had decided when he was 16 years old, hey, I'm going to be a tight end, he could have been a tight end. I mean, the guy is just capable of whatever, and blazing fast, huge, obviously. Just
his speed for how big he is, OC, is insane.
You know what? I'm going to look up the DK Metcalf draft profile.
He was second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken,
just to
right?
See what,
he was a little bit later of a pick for a guy who's turned out to be as big a star as he has.
Apparently, according to reports, multiple teams have inquired and been interested in DK Metcalf's services, which makes perfect sense. Okay, let's see here. Okay, he was a highly graded prospect. He's 6.8, which translates to being a year 1 starter. 6'3", 228 is what he weighed in at the combine. His athleticism score was a 94. 40-yard dash at 6'3", 228. DK Metcalf at the combine ran a 4.33. He had a 40-inch vertical jump, 11-foot 2-inch broad jump, 7.38 on the cone drill, and bench pressed 27 times, which I believe is the same number that Tyler Batty turned in this year. And was like among the top 5 for defensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken.
He's just a physical freak, man.
Oh,
so speaking of DK Metcalf, a slight tangent here. Did you catch the Dan Patrick show a couple days ago when they did the poll question? Would you rather have DK Metcalf's body and not be athletic, but you have his body, or have a worse body but be more athletic?
Okay, that's a great poll question.
Is that a great poll question? Most people landed on I'd rather be more athletic and not have as good a body.
Okay, so
which is interesting to me.
That skews very heavily. That's because it's a sports show.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Everyone who listens to sports or watches sports probably wishes they were better at sports. Even those of us who were halfway decent at one sport, we wish we were better at that sport and at every sport, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who got cut from his JV team junior year. So basketball team. So I absolutely wish I was better at basketball than I ended up being.
Now remove the sport allegiances that you have, and just tell me, would you want to look like DK Metcalf? And everybody says yes.
Yeah.
Like, if you are built like DK Metcalf, whether you're athletic or not, you have so many advantages in life.
Absolutely. And
people speak to you in a more respectful manner, either because they're afraid of you or they just admire the specimen that you are. Whatever you are attracted to is far more likely to be attracted to you if you're built like DK Metcalf. Now, here's the thing. If you're a man, if you're a James Peterson type who's like, you know what, I'm a family man, I want to settle down, I want to you don't need to be built like this, okay? If you're a man about town and you're trying to live your wild college days until you're 40, something like that is irreplaceable.
Absolutely.
To be built like DK Metcalf is that's winning the lottery if you're the pickup artist.
My favorite reaction on the show was Dan Patrick said, I'd like to try. I'd like to try to have that body. and I'd like to have that body and just try what life would be like. Yeah. A lot. So I think you're right. A lot of it was a sports thing, but a lot of the point, or that it's a sports show, a lot of people chiming in said, I would rather be more athletic. But some other reasoning that was interesting that they came up with was, if you're not athletic, you're going to get the questions you're going to have people look at you like, well, why do you look like that?
That's
what's the point? What's the point of your body if you're not athletic? But I would say, Derek Zoolander would have something to say. Hey, not that he looked like Ben Stiller did not look like DK Metcalf, but he would say that, you know what, for us, the only thing in life is that we're really, really ridiculously good looking, and we walk the runways as a model in Paris. You could be a model. You could be a male model with his body. You don't have to be athletic to be a male model.
That's right. In fact, a lot of male models and a lot of actors, who are typically very good looking, right, are they're not athletic.
NBA Celebrity Game every year is awful.
Watch what I love watching in the big budget films usually do a better job of it, but if you watch any sports themed like the sports scenes from High School Musical, whatever, right, you could tell that there's all of these people are theater kids. You're just oh, that guy doesn't know how to run. He can't dribble a basketball. That dude who's the best looking guy in the world and is super coordinated, obviously, because they can sing and dance.
And he's cast as the team's best player.
Yeah, and is the romantic lead because he's so handsome. Can't do a thing athletically.
Yeah.
It is really remarkable. It's why, and then there are actors who can. You know that Tom Cruise has a thing in his contract where he has to run in every movie?
Yes.
Because he can run?
He's got a beautiful running
He's got
style.
a good stride?
Yeah, he's got a very aesthetically pleasing running style, so he's I have to have a running scene.
Yes.
Yeah. That's my thing. That's what I'm great at.
It would be so much fun. This would be a big time event too. You could get a lot of money for this if you could figure out a way to do an NFL scouting combine style athletic testing for Hollywood actors.
Actors or models. Yeah.
Actors, models, actresses, the best looking people in the world.
Yeah. Who are in the best shape of just about anybody in the world. They look like they have athletic
just go
bodies. Yeah.
I'm going to throw this pass to you and see what happens.
That would be great trashy reality TV.
The most obnoxious thing about the whole DK Metcalf thing, who's now requesting a trade, is that he does not have to choose whether he wants to be freakishly athletic or be built like that.
He's both.
He's both. He has both.
Yeah.
And he seems very likable and intelligent and all those other things. It's
he's the complete package.
We all know these people in our life. There's always that one family that you grow up with. All the siblings are really good looking. They're all good athletes. They all have honor roll 4.0 students. You're just what the heck, man?
You're let some of the rest of us have one of those things.
A couple of them are really good musicians as well. You're just what are you talking about? Could you please leave some for the rest of us? DK Metcalf is that dude where if he's not your best friend, even if he is your best friend, you probably have some minor level of resentment for him because he's just so spectacularly built.
Yeah, and good at everything.
Now,
anyway,
let's get to the DK Metcalf. Like, how much do you want DK Metcalf on your team right now? He's now up to 235-ish pounds. Okay, getting a little fat. Just kidding, he's not. But his production, and this is
trying to knock you down a peg a little bit, DK.
This is partially why he wants to trade, right? His production has come down
because you're calling him fat. Is
yes.
that why he wants to trade?
In 2020,
production's gone down a bit. Yeah,
he scored 10 touchdowns. The 2021 season, he scored 12 touchdowns, 6, 8, and 5 touchdowns the last 3 seasons, respectively.
So those first 2 years with Russell Wilson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then those last 3
with Geno.
Who Geno has been more productive than Russell Wilson, but interesting that his numbers have been
90
lower.
catches in 2022, 66 catches apiece in 2023 and 2024, and that was on 119 targets and 108 targets. So that's not a great ratio.
No.
And look, DK is the guy that you send off the bus first, and everyone's just like, whoa. He can still play.
Yeah.
But also his salary demands are not modest, and he is a wide receiver, which means that he's going to affect, well, according to the stats, he's going to have a direct effect on 66 plays over the course of a season. And you're going to want to pay a guy like that between $25 and $30 million? That's what he wants. And he wants to go somewhere he would prefer a contender, which, of course, is the case for everybody. The market for DK Metcalf is large right now, according to multiple reports. I'm very curious to see how it actually plays out because, again, the Seahawks have no real leverage. He's requested a trade. They know that the marriage there is kind of over, and so you're going to get a 4th-round pick back for him. But then whoever signs him, whoever acquires him, is going to have to try to keep him happy by targeting him a lot, making him a feature player, winning a lot of football games. He's never struck me as a malcontent.
Yeah, he hasn't been that. He hasn't had the T.O. or Des Bryant moments on the sideline where you're like, where you're like, okay, man, like you guys are winning, calm down. He hasn't. At least doesn't have the reputation of like being a diva wide receiver, so that's a positive. Yeah, I wonder, OC. I wonder if a team like that has a young quarterback that hasn't quite lived up to the hype yet, but is still very talented. Maybe like the Chargers with Justin Herbert, maybe the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. I wonder if that might be the best fit for a guy like DK Metcalf, because this is a guy who needs to kind of rehab his reputation as a performer because his numbers have steadily dropped the last few years, being paired with a very talented young quarterback who also needs to rehab their reputation a little bit. I wonder if that might be the perfect marriage, is a young quarterback who's very talented but hasn't quite been able to get over the hump, with a still young receiver, very talented, but has had disappointing last few years compared to his first couple.
Here's something that's going to make you want to throw up. One of the top 7 trade destinations for DK Metcalf, because they have the assets potentially to make it happen, Kansas City Chiefs.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
If the Kansas City Chiefs get DK Metcalf, everyone else should just like collude against them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be totally unfair.
How much would Jordan Love adore having DK Metcalf as an option in Green Bay?
That would be I think that'd be an incredible fit. Jordan Love is a guy that he's not necessarily that young quarterback that needs to rehab his reputation a little bit. He's had a great last couple of years, really season and a half, because it really took about halfway through his first year as a starter to really get going. Mm-hmm. But Green Bay is a place that notoriously does not invest in its wide receiving court. That would be an absolutely great fit.
Okay, so we'll see where DK ends up. We'll keep you posted on all of that. I told you Bobby Wagner got extended by the Commanders.
Congrats to Bobby Wagner. That's great for Washington.
The timeless Bobby Wagner continues to play incredibly well.
Led the team in tackles, right?
Yes.
This last year in his 13th year. Like,
he's been in the Pro Bowl all but 1 year of his career. He's just a freak, and it's awesome. Okay, so there are reports out there that it was actually, I think, came out Wednesday, that Brock Purdy's been offered $45 million a year by the San Francisco 49ers. You buying or selling on that being the right move for Brock and for San Francisco? Because I saw Keyshawn and company were debating this. Like, he could say no way and just bet on himself, not sign this extension, play out the last year of his contract, become an unrestricted free agent, and be like, I had a phenomenal year, minus one weapon, potentially minus two weapons, because we'll see what happens with Ayuk. You definitely don't have the same level of talent surrounding you that you did 2 seasons ago. Would you bet on yourself and say, nope, $45 million, I can get 60? Or if you're Brock Purdy, who's been making $1 million a year, under that actually, would you say, yeah, I will take the average annual value of $45 million a year, even on a 3-year deal?
I think we're the wrong people to ask this question to, because we absolutely would take the 45% raise, right? But I would hope that Brock Purdy, everyone likes the bet on yourself play. Like, everyone in the media, especially if they're former players, it's the go-to, hey, no, bet on yourself, you could get $60 million. Okay, not everyone is talented enough when they're down 1 or 2 weapons, like Brock Purdy is going to be with your San Francisco 49ers this year, for that to be the right play. And I love Brock Purdy. I'm probably higher on him than most. But you have to have a level of self-awareness that says, I'm Mr. Irrelevant. I was Mr. Irrelevant. I have greatly exceeded that, but I'm still not the talent that there's a lot of quarterbacks more talented than me, and this is a 45% raise.
No. It is a 45x
45 raise. Yeah, 45x raise. 45 times raise, excuse me. I'm going to take this money, and guess what? This will help me. This will hopefully help the Niners, my great front office, build around me and ensure that I'm going to be on a contender throughout the rest of this next contract. That's what I would hope his thought process is. But yeah, sure. If you have the kind of ego and confidence in yourself to be like, 45 million is not enough, I can make 60 next year. Yeah, sure. Go ahead and take that massive risk and bet on yourself. I wouldn't do that in his position.
$45 million per year makes him the 13th highest paid quarterback in the league.
That's so low. No,
that puts
decent.
him right below Deshaun Watson and on par with Kirk Cousins and Patrick Mahomes. Now, it's a 3-year deal, allegedly. Patrick Mahomes is on a 10-year deal for that much money.
Yeah. That's the other thing. A short-term deal, you can take this raise, and then in a couple of years, you can do both. You can bet on yourself and take this money.
Now, I have said this many times, and functionally there is no difference between having $125 million and having $170 million. There's no difference.
I would think
how you live your life.
I would think that that's the case. Yeah, it's like St. George in June, it gets to max 105, but Vegas it gets to 115. Like, are you feeling that much different?
What can you afford at 3 years at $60 million, $180 million versus 3 years, $145 million? What could you afford at the higher number that you can't at the lower number? There's nothing.
Less of those things, I guess.
Like, I need another yacht. I mean, come on. Yeah. That's not his vibe, right?
Yeah.
Like, for Brock Purdy, you have to be honest with yourself, okay? How much was I the beneficiary of the talent around me? Did I help my team? Absolutely.
Am I capable of being a top end starting quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely.
Am I Joe Burrow? If he says yes, he's lying to himself.
Yeah.
If he says, am I, well, this is the other thing about it. There are so many guys that are like, am I Dak Prescott? That's the problem. Because you look at it and you say, well, yeah, I can be Dak Prescott.
Can be Dak
and
Prescott.
he's making $60 million a year.
Yeah.
So maybe I should too.
And
but if you say, am I Joe Burrow, you got to be honest and say, no. Do I have the same, am I Lamar Jackson, who's making $52 million a year? Well, no, you're not. You're a much different quarterback, but we know that you're not him.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how these conversations go or how the thought process goes for these guys.
Certainly not what their agents are telling them. But the other part of this is the other point I was trying to make is that because you're not those guys, the top 5 quarterback talent in the league, you can take less than top money and you can win more than a lot of those guys.
Here's what you do if you're Brock Purdy.
You can beat those teams.
What you should do if you're Brock Purdy is you should call Tom Brady.
Absolutely.
And you should say, hey, I know that you're involved in the Raiders ownership right now.
Off the record.
You were underdrafted and outperformed the expectation at an even higher level than I am right now. Okay? I want to be a great quarterback on a great team. What can I do with my salary to make that possible? And Tom Brady's probably not going to give you the answers because he seems like kind of a jerk, honestly. But maybe you could get someone close to Tom.
As you said, he's got a vested. He's one of the owners.
Who's his agent?
Team.
Don Yee, isn't that his agent?
Is that right? Yeah.
And you say, hey, never mind. I'll call your agent, and his agent's going to say, here's what we did with Tom. We structured his bonuses differently. We renegotiated frequently. And Tom never sacrificed really anything, but he was not the highest paid quarterback in the league. Look what Patrick Mahomes is doing. He's following this model right now. And the Chiefs might get DK Metcalf, for hell's sake, because of it.
Those two teams, the Patriots with Brady, Chiefs now with Mahomes, are forever contenders.
Correct.
Like that I would think would be like, give me enough money that I can feel good about the money I make. And I can live more than comfortably, and then that's it. I don't need more than that. Put a lot of good players around me. That's what I think a lot more people ought to be thinking.
If I'm able to look in the mirror and know that, yes, I make less money than Dak Prescott and Jared Goff, but at the same time, I'm on a better team and make more money than Matt Stafford, then I make more money than Josh Allen, who's pretty dang good. I make the same money that Patrick Mahomes makes. There's dignity in all of those things.
I would agree. But agents, players' confidence level in their own self-confidence, like that makes you go, you know what? I need top money.
Yeah.
So,
and
look, I'm not sure if Brock Purdy's that guy. He doesn't strike me as that guy.
I mean, $60 million a year would be lovely to have. There's also the potential that you try to play this thing out and your next offer is for $30 million a year, because we learn, and I dread this as a 49ers fan, because we learn that you're solid, but you're actually not good enough to elevate a roster that is losing some of its most important weapons. You're not the guy that can make this team that much better. You're not Lamar Jackson. You're not Patrick Mahomes. You're not Josh Allen.
Sean O'Connell.
You're not Jalen Hurts.
Brock Purdy hater.
I'm not a hater. I'm just not a lover.
So he's Brock ugly to you. He's not Brock Purdy.
Okay. That's our sign. It's time for a break. We'll come back with the Utah Jazz tank race update, and then Tom Callahan joins us to start hour number 3. Don't go anywhere. This is the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. All right, the tank race update on the Sean O'Connell Show. Are the Jazz successfully accelerating toward the bottom of the league standings? James Peterson has our NBA tank race update.
All right, real quick look at what happened last night. Only one of the teams in the tank race, which are the bottom 4 teams in the league right now, was in action, and the Pelicans, unfortunately, lost to the Hawks, so that doesn't help the Jazz in the tank race, but they are still the Jazz do have a slight lead on them still, so it doesn't hurt them too much either. Tonight, Jazz are back in action. You heard it in the updates. They're at Toronto, 5:30 on K-Jazz. The Jazz are resting everybody again. Lowry, John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, all have been ruled out. Keontae George questionable with an illness. That leaves guys like Walker Kessler and Colin Sexton still active, so they're not quite resting everybody like they did against Washington, but resting a lot of key players within guys out with injuries, air quotes, whatever the case may be. Raptors got quite a few guys that they're holding out as well. R.J. Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, former Jazzman, former Runnin' Ute, Jakob Poeltl, all out for the Raptors, and of course Brandon Ingram hasn't suited up for the Raptors yet. He's still out. He's been out since December when he injured his ankle while he was with the Pelicans. So he's still not returning. So they got a lot of players sitting out as well. Again, 5:30 tip on that game on K-Jazz. Raptors previously a regular in the tank race update OC. They played themselves out of that weeks ago. But they don't necessarily want to win a ton of games. So this should be an interesting game tonight as far as the tank is concerned. T-Wolves are in Miami taking on the Heat. T-Wolves have started to right the ship, unfortunately, but we'll see. The Heat, they're similar. They're in similar spots as far as where the T-Wolves are in the Western Conference standings, where the Heat are in the Eastern Conference standings. So that one could probably go either way. Hornets also hosting the Cavs. That's a loss for the Hornets. Cavs are too good. No matter what, there's no way this Charlotte team is upsetting the Cavs because the Cavs aren't resting people. They probably could start resting people because they have that kind of a lead on the number 1 seed, but they're not doing that yet. So
how many games up are the Cavs right now? They're like 8 games up or something.
It's like 8-9 games up. In the standings right now. I'll check that in a sec. But yeah, they've got a massive lead for the number 1 seed. Coming up tomorrow in the tank race as we head into the weekend on this Friday, I'll give you some games to be paying attention to. Hornets hosting the Nets. Winnable game for the Hornets on Saturday. Nets they're starting to play themselves into the play-in race, believe it or not, OC. They're like almost 20 games under 500, but the play that's within range for the 10 seed in the East, which is that's wrong on multiple levels. They ought to be a tank team, but they've gotten themselves close enough to the play-in. They're probably just like, why not? We're not gonna get top odds in the draft. Let's try to play 1 or 2 extra games here.
Why not?
So that's a winnable game for Charlotte at home tomorrow night. Pelicans at Rockets, Wizards at Raptors, and then on Sunday, few games on Sunday to watch as well. Jazz back in action against the Sixers. Sixers are they're technically in the play-in race too, OC, but they're awful right now. So that one, if the Jazz aren't careful, that one could end up being a win you don't want. It's in Philly, though. Pelicans hosting the Grizzlies on Sunday. T-Wolves hosting the Spurs, who, of course, still no Victor Wembanyama. He's out for the rest of the year, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's your games coming up tonight and the rest of this weekend. Update the standings here. The Wizards still won 12-49, up to 12 wins, though. So they're starting to come back to the pack. Charlotte's in the second spot, 14-47. That's 2 games back of the Wizards. Jazz right behind them, 2.5 games back at 15-47. and the Pelicans at 17 and 46, good for about 4 games back in the tank race. So that's your tank race update. Oh, real quick, wearing the Carolina jersey, Carolina Duke. So that's Cooper Flagg's next opportunity to impress us at the college level. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be watching that anyway because it's a great rivalry, and a lot of Duke fans everywhere. Carolina's still in the tournament, on the bubble for the tournament. So a lot of stakes there just for that game for the teams, but good opportunity to get to watch Cooper Flagg. Not many pressure-packed regular season games, but this one certainly will be. So it'll be a good gauge on how he can perform in a pressure-packed environment on the road. It's in Chapel Hill. So
I just like to see him cement his legend, because he's going to be a one-and-done player.
Yeah.
Like if he drops a 50 burger on North Carolina or something.
I would hate it for the Tar Heels, but, I mean, it would be fun to watch.
All right, there's your tank race update. It is now 1:03 p.m., which means we're late to get to hour number 3, but also the NHL trade deadline has expired. No major news, as far as I know, on Utah Hockey Club players being traded away. So congratulations. We got our boys still in Salt Lake City. I think that's a good thing. We'll talk about it with Tom Callahan next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Backhanded across, and they score. A sharp angle shot from Dylan Gunther, who's got one of the quick releases in the NHL and a fantastic shot for sure. And he displayed it right there for his 23rd goal of the season.
Daniel's on the call there, courtesy of FanDuel Sports Network. 4-2 Utah Hockey Club victory over the Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Gunther continues to score goals at an impressive clip. Tom Callahan joins us now, Utah Hockey Club insider, host of Locked On Utah Hockey Club, friend of the program at this point. Tom, welcome back. How are you?
Well, thank you. I appreciate my elevated status to friendship level of the program.
At least I like to think so. I hope so. You're a valued contributor at the very, very least. Look, I've been refreshing, making sure I don't miss anything. Utah Hockey Club standing pat, no big trades coming as the trade deadline is now, I guess, 9 minutes in our rear view. Is that what we're hearing and what we're seeing?
That's what it appears to be. And of course, there is always the potential that things, as long as they were submitted to the league before 3 p.m. Eastern time, they can still come out later. As a matter of fact, we just had a blockbuster hit. Brad Marchand's going to the Florida Panthers from the Boston Bruins. That is a massive trade.
The captain.
Yeah, breaking news right here on the show. That one literally just hit the wire. So, yeah, that's a big one. But right now, it looks like Utah stayed the course. And you know what the phrase I'm using is they went shopping in their own store. They extended some guys that they wanted to keep around, some of whom were potential trade bait for other teams and valuable pieces. And then they started handing out some extensions. And so then they did not make any moves, at least so far that we've seen at the deadline. And I don't think it's the worst thing. I think they like the core they have. They're going to build around it and, hopefully take another step or two next year.
So let's talk about some of those extensions. Veggie locked up for another 5 years. Start there. Do you like this move for the club? To me, it sends a message that we think when this team is good and is firmly in the playoff hunt, he's the guy that's going to be stopping the puck.
Yes, that is a huge commitment, and not a lot, but not a little bit of money going to him. They got him locked up through 2030 now, 28 years old, so that really does kind of put him into his prime for a goaltender, that late 20s, early 30s window. 4.75 is a very reasonable figure. And look, he wanted to be there. They wanted him to be there. A great resurgent year. That was our question. And I remember talking about it so much in the preseason was Ingram kind of seized that starting job last year. The year before, it was Vejmelka. So in a contract year, which this was, how was he going to respond? Well, his numbers have been very good as far as goals against, save percentage, and a lot of the advanced metrics. The one-loss record hasn't been there, and that's just a product.
Backhanded across, and they score.
But honestly, I like it. I think that locking him up for that long, and you've got Ingram for one more year on his deal, so there was no need to have to shake up the goaltending tree right now. They like their tandem, and it's secured.
Also, I guess it happened a little earlier in the week. We talked about Olli Määttä getting his extension as well, a guy who didn't show up till October for this team, but has been pretty valuable. And I was reading your evaluation of it via tweet, at least. A solid stay-at-home type defender. He's been paired, I think, with every other guy that was healthy through that stretch, and seems pretty versatile in that regard. Do you like Olli Määttä as a part of the short-term plans at the very least?
I'm surprised he didn't try to split him in half and play him with himself. I mean, the guy, he's been great, and he's got Stanley Cup experience, which same thing with Ian Cole. I know we'll talk about him in a minute, but Määttä came in at a time where they were in dire need of defensemen. I mean, at one point, 3 of the top 4 were injured on this Utah Hockey Club. That was the Dursey, Marino, with them being out, and at various times, like Sergachev missed some time, and it's just been so difficult to keep guys healthy for this Utah Hockey Club. So when Määttä was brought in, he immediately became the ice time leader for a good couple of weeks, and now has dropped his role back. But he's a smart guy, takes care of his own end. And when you pair him with a run-and-gun player, whether that be a Dursey or a Sergachev, and I'm not saying they have to be run-and-gun all the time, but it frees them up to do so because Mata's the guy who's going to be smart in the back end, going to take care of his own end, and if his D partner, if it's Dursey or whoever decides to fly, he's going to be aware of that and take care of that. And you need that. You absolutely need that. I think a lot of Utah defensemen like to just get up and go if they can. And I don't mind it as long as the team is aware of it and covers should the play go back the other way. Now, they've been inconsistent about it this year, but Mata goes a long way towards making the consistency much better.
Tom Callahan, our guest here, talking Utah Hockey Club as the trade deadline in the NHL has just passed. You did allude to this, so Ian Cole gets a 1-year extension, as does Kerfoot, $3 million apiece. Is this the right price point for both of these guys?
Yeah, Cole's going to be 37 next year, so kind of in the twilight of his career, but again, Cup winner, and former teammate with Mata, and now here again. I love what he brings from a veteran presence. He's just a smart guy, can be tough. Can really lean on you and give you those hard minutes, is willing to sacrifice the body, still leads the league in blocks, so he's still getting in front of the puck, just plays a hard game that, let's face it, not everyone wants to play that way. And he would have been a huge trade target for teams here at the deadline had he been available. I absolutely, if I'm a Stanley Cup contender and I think I've got a shot and I need defensive depth, he would have been on my list of phone calls and inquiries is, hey, what would it take to land Ian Cole?
So we're keeping a close eye on this playoff push, and there's an uphill climb for Utah Hockey Club to be even within striking distance of that number 8 spot. They need help from the Flames, the Canucks, the Blues. They've got to play well. They got to make sure the Ducks don't come sneaking up behind them. I'm starting to get to take a look at it and say it's less and less realistic that they're going to be a playoff club this year. But I don't want to completely abandon all hope. When you look at the numbers and who's got games in hands and the tiebreaker and your 3 points, 2 points, and 1 point behind that 8 spot, respectively, with the Flames, Canucks, and Blues, how realistic is a late season playoff push?
For Utah, the way they're playing right now, I actually think it's pretty realistic because this is the first time all year they've had their D-core completely healthy. And I'll point to last night's game against Detroit as a good measuring stick for that. They are, as of right now, 3 points out behind Calgary, as you mentioned. Yes, they have to leap over St. Louis, but they have a game in hand over St. Louis. And then Vancouver. Vancouver's got one less game played, but Vancouver didn't do anything at the deadline. And there was rumors that they were going to, kind of make some moves here. But what I mean by that is they didn't add anything significant. There was talk they might trade Pettersson, who's been ineffective. They didn't do that either. Calgary didn't do much. St. Louis didn't do much. So I think these teams are saying, you know what, we saw teams up top, especially Winnipeg and Dallas, make some major moves. They're going to try to run what they have here down the stretch. But you look at the last 10 for a lot of these teams, like Calgary's average are 3-4-3, Vancouver's 5-4-1. St. Louis 6-2-2 is starting to put together some games, but 7-3-0 for Utah in the last 10. And they're doing it by allowing fewer and fewer goals. The defense is coming together. You can see it. And that's what I love about it right now for Utah is, to me, defense wins championships. I don't care how many high-flying scorers you have. You need to be a rugged, difficult team to play against. You need to be a physical team to play against, wear other teams down, and you need to take care of your own end. And I think Utah finally having a healthy defense probably gives them a very good shot at that. And, I mean, you remember at the beginning of the year when we talked about this, they said, you know what, if they overachieve, they'll get a wild card spot. But if they're in the race, that's where I expect them to be this year, and that's exactly where they are. And I think that's also a reason why Utah was not in a hurry to do anything at the deadline.
Yeah, I loved the stance, and I loved it. We didn't have to wait till today. Early in the week, you heard Bill Armstrong say, I think this team has earned the right to stay together. And I thought that was pretty indicative of the mindset. Of course, you take it all with a grain of salt when you're talking about professional sports. Although I'm learning that we could probably take hockey guys more at face value than you can other front office executives and and other players, certainly, other athletes, certainly. But I loved the sentiment, and I love the idea that, like, look, we like what we have here, and there's plenty of room for development and growth with the roster as it stands. The expenditures, the extensions seem to indicate all of that. So, I mean, is this core that we see with Utah Hockey Club, is this the core that is going to take them eventually, whether it's this year or beyond, to meaningful playoff runs?
For the most part, yes. There will obviously be a little bit of roster churn, year over year. Some of the players that I thought might have gone somewhere at the deadline this year, like Nick Bukestad, ended up on IR. So maybe there was, and you could trade him, but they don't. And there's a couple other players I know that, people are looking at and wondering, all right, what are you going to do with this guy? What are you going to do with that guy? But for the most part, I mean, you've got Clayton Keller, at 7.15 through 27-28. Like, he's not going anywhere. Nick Schmaltz has got another year. He's a guy they're probably going to look to extend if they still feel like next year is a year they get what they want out of them. But you got a couple expirings next year. But right now, next year is the year where you see if this core becomes a legitimate playoff contender. So the 25-26 season is where you look at Utah Hockey Club, you evaluate what you have, and this is where Bill Armstrong is really going to have to earn his money as a general manager, because he has to make a decision, honestly, not so much this year on what core he wants to stay together, but next year is where he's going to be faced with some difficult decisions of what core he wants to stay together.
Who in around is shifting the focus, I guess, away from Utah Hockey Club, at least temporarily here? Who around the league helped themselves the most? I mean, it might be the Panthers, given what you just told us at the beginning of this conversation. But your thoughts on which team got better at this trade deadline?
Sure. I think there are a couple of teams that really did help themselves. Mikko Rantanen going to Dallas. If Rantanen rediscovers his scoring touch in Dallas, the Stars got exponentially better. So just that one move alone. But, I like what Winnipeg did. I think Winnipeg is already my Stanley Cup favorite in the West. And then today they went out and got Brandon Tanev from Seattle for a second rounder. They got Luke Schenn from Pittsburgh for a couple of draft picks. Schenn is a guy who'd be top four almost anywhere else in the league. And on Winnipeg, he's going to be on their 5-6 pair. Tanev gives them some depth on the wing, and he's a very solid player. I like his game a lot. He's going to come in and just make the Jets deeper. I think they got a lot better at the deadline without really giving anything up. They did it with all draft capital. And they didn't give up a first rounder to do it. I thought that was good. And then outside of that, it's going to be a bit of a toss up. Colorado did add, they added Brock Nelson from the Islanders, which he's a great player. They traded Middlestead to Boston for Charlie Coyle. Coyle coming in down the middle gives them some center depth. I think Colorado did something. I don't know if it's going to be enough, though, to keep up with Winnipeg, and especially the huge question mark is going to be over Dallas.
So I asked Bear Torgny this when he joined us earlier, and he kind of laughed. I wanted your thoughts on it. We got the news that Matthew Tkachuk is going to be out for the remainder of the regular season, and it was because of the injury, and the credit for that injury goes to exhibition play, technically exhibition play in Four Nations. And my thought was immediately went to, well, in any other sport, in an all-star break, in an exhibition contest, you lose one of the best players for a franchise, the best players in the league. Immediately, decision makers are going to start reevaluating whether or not that thing that caused the injury was truly worth it. And, like I said twice already, we're learning that hockey's a little bit different. The way they view things is a little bit different. But when I asked Bear, he chuckled about it. And he said, man, I don't know, because you got to prioritize what you're doing, chasing a cup, but also you can't tell these players not to represent their country. Your thoughts on whether or not it's quote unquote worth it for Tkachuk to participate in Four Nations now that we know it hurt him and kept him out for the regular season?
You know what? We're going to table this question for the next interview because I have breaking news.
Uh-oh.
Utah has made a trade.
Uh-oh.
So, from the Chicago Blackhawks, They let's see. Let me get this right here because this looks like it's a little convoluted. But Shea Weber, who is on Utah, so I imagine they have that on the wrong side. Shea Weber's contract must be going to Chicago along with a 6th-round pick. Victor Soderstrom and Aku Roddy. It looks like now. So let me go through this. That's actually Utah making the deal there to move these guys. So Aku Roddy. Okay, so this I have it straight now. Okay. So it is Weber's contract, Victor Soderstrom, the defenseman, and Aku Roddy to Chicago for a 6th-round pick.
In 2026.
Yes, 2026.
All right. Okay.
So that's, and I'll tell you what that does. So this is interesting because now, okay, so remember how just a moment ago we were talking about how next year all this information for Bill Armstrong has to, come into play and figure out what he's going to do. Shea Weber's contract came off the books next year. So that eliminates that give me 2 seconds. I'll look it up. It was $7.857 million albatross.
Yeah.
So that may have just freed up a lot of money for the Utah Hockey Club. That is interesting to me. So what they've done is clear the runway to either maybe ink some extensions or waive at some free agents. But that's clearing the decks is what that is for Utah Hockey Club. That's a strategic move. It's not a hockey move right now, but that is a hockey move for the summer and beyond.
Little cap room situation. Soderstrom's been playing in Sweden, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
that's a player you may or may not ever see.
Wow. All right. Fascinating. So Utah Hockey Club does make a move. Obviously, as we talked about earlier in the interview, if it doesn't have to break news-wise before 3 p.m. It has to be submitted to the league before 3 p.m. Eastern time. We passed that threshold 25 minutes ago, but this is out. The Chicago Blackhawks get Victor Soderstrom, Aku Roddy, and Shea Weber's contract comes off the books for Utah in exchange for a future pick, 6th-round pick in 2026, which obviously you hope that you draft well and you turn that into something great, but that's not where teams are banking on finding foundational pieces.
No, at this point, those two players, Soderstrom and Roddy, were sweeteners to Chicago to please take Shea Weber.
Yeah.
Because the way Chicago's going into its rebuild, if you needed any further confirmation of how deep they're going to go into a rebuild, they are turning into the team now that looks like they're going to assume some contracts.
Wow. Crazy.
It is how the mighty have fallen. But I'll tell you what, they mortgaged their future for their Stanley Cups, and they won 3 of them. So this is finally the time to pay the piper for Chicago.
You know what? Worth it if you're taking home championships, right?
Yes, I think so.
Weber, by the way, for those who didn't know, he was on a 14-year, $110 million contract, and his cap hit was almost $8 million this season for the Utah Hockey Club.
Yep. You can't even give out a contract that long anymore. The maximum is 8 years.
It's wild. That's you already alluded to this, but Mikko Rantanen going to Dallas, how much does that really change things for them?
I'll tell you what, it changes it a lot for Dallas if he is the player he was in Colorado when he was going. He was, quite frankly, not good. I think it was 5 or 6 points since he went to Carolina. And it's hard to say why he never fit in those 16 games, but he never looked good, never looked comfortable, did not discover his scoring touch, which Carolina, for whatever reason, he just didn't fit in. This is huge for Dallas because now it gives them a massive weapon. And one of the hardest things to do to get out of that Central Division is going to be to score enough goals on Connor Hellebuck and the Winnipeg Jets, who are a team or a league best defensive team, fewest goals against. That's where the rubber meets the road in whoever gets out of the Central. If it's going to be Dallas, it's because they score more goals than Winnipeg. If it's going to be Winnipeg, it's because they play better defense than Dallas's offense is capable of scoring. That's what it's going to come down to. So that's huge. That's huge for Dallas. That could actually put them into a conference final situation if if Rantanen comes in and rediscovers his touch.
Tom, always great having you come on the show. Enjoy your weekend. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, and look forward to chatting again next time. We'll get back to that other question about is it worth it.
Yeah, we'll keep that one in the old holster because it's always going to be relevant. That's Tom Callahan, Utah Hockey Club insider, host of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. All right, we already touched on this a little bit, but the Puck Lake City playoff push. You're 65 points right now. You're 3 points behind Calgary for the final wild card spot, 2 points behind Vancouver, 1 point behind St. Louis, and who is it? It's Calgary's got a tough one tonight, as does Vancouver. No, as does St. Louis. So keep an eye on what's going on with those two teams. Utah Hockey Club continues to try and rise up the ranks. Chicago Blackhawks up next. And they made some moves ahead of this trade deadline, including taking on that big old albatross salary, $7.8 million, which in the NHL that's a big money contract. We get all skewed. Our expectations get skewed when we start talking about these numbers in the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL. But that Shea Weber contract was a big one, and that's off the Utah books right now. So.
Yeah, it's about $8 million a year. That's mid-level exception contract in the NBA, which is that's like what Derek Favors got his last contract with the Jazz. Like that's nothing in the NBA, but you're right. That's big time money for NHL, and a guy Shea Weber who wasn't really a factor for Utah Hockey Club this year. So this is a good move by them. They get another draft pick, and they don't have to give up players that are really part of their core for it.
ESPN 792.1 FM, we've teamed up with Motorsportsland to send you, our listeners, on a UTV excursion along the beautiful Wasatch Front. All you have to do is visit ESPN700sports.com and fill out the entry form to be eligible to win. The contest ends March 12th, so make sure you enter now. ESPN700sports.com, Motorsportsland, helping you get away with a UTV excursion along the Wasatch Front. Airing of grievances comes next. James has a couple. I like it. And you know what? An institution has gone away in the food industry, and I'll tell you what I mean when I air that grievance next on the Sean O'Connell Show. 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in with your own grievances on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Time to air your grievances, unburden yourself on a Friday, go into your weekend with a clear conscience. Get that little annoyance off your chest. 877-353-0700 is how you get a hold of us. You can also tweet me at RealOCSports. Air your grievance now. James Peterson's got one or two. I've got one or two. James, you want to go first?
Yeah, we touched on this yesterday, but it's still just eating at me, OC.
Okay, sticking in your craw.
Just sticking in my craw. I have a grievance against ESPN for canceling one of the best sports shows on television, and maybe the last fun show on ESPN, Around the Horn.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know that ESPN has a fun show anymore. OC, I mean, maybe First Take is fun for some people. I feel like Around the Horn was what First Take would like to be. Lots of debate, whatever, but in a more fun, more just a better way. Right?
Is Pat McAfee on ESPN right now?
Well, McAfee's on ESPN. I guess that's a fun show.
That's a fun show.
Okay,
right.
That's the last one.
Pat McAfee. It's very different. It's like I enjoyed the sort of game show feel of some of that programming that ESPN had in kind of like from 2000 till now.
It's a lot more talk format, which there's nothing wrong with it. We're in the talk format business,
right?
So
but
which can be fun. But
I mean, even on this show, it's like it's good to just throw in a little game or two there. I like those things. I think that's fun. It's digestible. It's snackable content. And as someone who has a tendency to get kind of long-winded and belabor one point after another, it is really handy and really excellent if you can move on. You can be forced to move on quickly. First Take was like, Around the Horn was, it forces you to have a quick thought. You got to get it out there, and then you move on to the next thing. I enjoy that version of sports talk.
So, yeah, my grievance is against ESPN for canceling Around the Horn, one of the last fun shows that they have. It will be missed for sure. Big part of my, as we talked about yesterday, big part of my childhood, watching First Take right after getting home from school. So, grievance, ESPN.
Okay, grievance here.
How dare you?
I like that. I got one. This is actually a big one for me. Again, 877-353-0700. Air your own grievances here. I'm airing a grievance with kindergarten crushes, okay? James, not prepared to be dealing with this yet, okay?
Is this someone
else?
else?
His daughter is 5.
Yeah.
And look, when I was in kindergarten, I had a crush, okay? Shout out Stephanie Rice, wherever you are in your life now, all right? I was a big fan. Here's what happened, okay? I'm not going to tell you the school. I'm not going to tell you the names of the individuals involved. But allegedly, there was a situation where a young man cut out a heart, okay? This is not a Valentine, James. Cut out a heart from construction paper. The cutest little kindergarten thing possible. Gave said heart to somebody very close to me, okay? And that was well received. That was a happy moment, okay?
Okay.
So then the reciprocity, the return gesture, was to draw a picture on a piece of paper with some fond words of affection and to hand it back. Later, presumably in the school day, okay? This was a return. This was not the first move, James, okay? This was like, oh, thank you for the heart. I appreciate that gesture. Now let me reciprocate so you could show that at least for the next 3 to 5 days, this is very serious. Little kid, no thanks, hands it back.
The kid who gave the heart.
What are you doing? Grievance! I don't like that one bit, James. Those are mixed messages all over the place.
Seriously.
For anybody.
Way too early for that kind of
James,
playing those kind of games.
If your wife came up to you with a heart cut out of construction paper, unsolicited by you, and was just like, here you go. And then you were like, ooh, thank you. And now I'm going to write you a little love letter. And you handed it back, and she was just like, no thanks.
Yeah, that
What?
would be.
In your 30s, that would be heartbreaking.
Oh, man.
Oh, I hate it. Grievance aired on the whole kindergarten crush thing. I am not prepared to deal with this at this moment in my life.
I'm so sorry.
And
I'm sorry to the person close to you that had to experience
And I'll tell you,
that.
she handled it very, very well.
Good for her.
She is like an absolute champ, and is like, kids are very resilient.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when they fall and get hurt. 5 minutes later, they're running around doing the exact same thing that got them hurt in the first place. That, thankfully, is how it works emotionally at this point as well. But, man, that was a ground-shaking revelation for me in the house. Just like, wait, tell that story again. So he made the first move, and then your return gesture was rejected? That is not okay.
Did she do that all on her own, or did you and your wife help her? Did mom and dad help her with
this
the return
was all
gesture?
at school, James.
So you guys didn't say, hey, you know what? Here's a good thing to do. She just did that. She thought all that on her own.
Yes,
That's
this
amazing.
was 100% at school.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway,
you got to be proud of her for that.
No, yeah, she's wonderful.
That's amazing. But
this
yeah,
person who's so close to me is like, an angel among us. And this little rapscallion, this ne'er-do-well, this little hooligan throwing these mixed messages around.
Dare you say Gaston?
Oh, I have a grievance. And, of course, you can't do anything to the kid. So if you're that kid's parents, watch out.
Watch out.
All right? I got words for you next time I see you.
That's
a grievance.
Our guy Alonzo texted in a grievance. I don't know if you saw this early this morning. B's baseball tickets prices was his grievance. I'm looking at them now, just pulling up the prices. Lawn general admission, $13 each.
Okay.
For lawn.
Up from 10?
Yeah, so that's up a little bit.
That's a 30% hike.
Section 119, $44.
Come on. What are we doing?
And it goes up from there.
What are we doing?
Come on, Bees.
Here, look, we love the Bees so much. I'm not prepared to deal with this either. This is the first summer in I don't know how long that we're not going to have Bees baseball at Smith's Ballpark.
Yeah, you'll still have Utah baseball for the
Yes.
start of the summer at Smith's Ballpark.
Yes, which is
year, before they move to on campus.
It's such a beautiful little park when you sit behind home plate and the view past the batter's eye is the Wasatch Mountains, and it's just fantastic, man.
So good.
And now, I have not seen
the renderings of the Daybreak Stadium look awesome too.
I haven't seen the setup. I'm sure it's lovely out there.
Yeah,
I know people who live. I have like 4 of my high school friends, all of them married with families. They live out there, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. The traffic situation out there is going to be rough on game days. So we'll see how it all works out. But I'm not airing a grievance because you do what you do for your business. That's fine. But I am bummed that Bees baseball is not going to be downtown.
Yeah.
Especially right by my favorite place to grab a burger, man.
Oh yeah, look, that place is outstanding. Alonzo will air the grievance for us on the ticket prices. How about that? Shout out to our guy.
That's Alonzo. He can air the ticket prices. He can air his grievance with ticket prices. That's fine.
Shout out to Alonzo. Thank you for the grievance. Hopefully he's that lets out a lot of frustration. Us airing that for him. I have a second grievance, OC, if you're ready for it.
Yeah, secondary grievances are always welcome.
Did you see the news that the Bengals have given Trey Hendrickson permission to seek a trade?
The Bengals are an unserious franchise on the defensive side of the ball.
Seriously unserious. Like, no defense last year. They had no defensive production except seemingly Trey Hendrickson, and he led the league in sacks, right? Like, he was really their only defensive production. And they say, you know what? No thanks. We have maybe the league's best offense. We just need if we just had a little bit of defense, we'd have made the playoffs and maybe another conference championship, Super Bowl run. But you know what? Our best player, go ahead and seek a trade. Grievance. This is ridiculous by the Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm starting to believe that they think their offense can be so high-powered and so high-paid, for that matter, that it'll just erase whatever defensive deficiencies they've got.
It does remind me of late Peyton Manning era Colts, where they just stopped drafting defensive players altogether. They stopped. Like Bob Sanders was like, okay, if he's healthy, we'll have a great defense. Other than those 3 years that he was maybe the best safety in the league or one of the best safeties in the league, he was not healthy. So the defense was only okay, but the offense was so good as long as they had a lead, and they still had Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. So as long as they had the pass rush and the offense, as long as they got a lead, they're like, we're going to win. But you lose in the playoffs that way. Like you maybe win a lot of regular season games that way. You lose in the playoffs that way. Trust me. I saw it play out with Indianapolis. I'm afraid that's what's going to happen to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And hopefully they're not able to find a trade for Trey Hendrickson because they need all the help they can get on the defensive side. Not even a Bengals fan, and this frustrates me. OC. Grievance
aired. Love it. This actually coming from my sister. Shout out to my sister who's listening in Boston on the East Coast, the Boston suburbs. Grievance with the Boston Bruins for trading the captain, Brad Marchand, to the Florida Panthers, no less.
Yeah, that's a budding rivalry.
By the way, Panthers fans have hated Marchand.
Yeah.
And the Bruins in general. So now they're going to have to, get used to it. It's like everyone in the West all of a sudden getting Draymond Green on their team. Be like, oh, great. He's our problem now. Marchand is like he's a spark plug. He's a little firebrand. He's a little bit of a problem, right? And this is wild. I mean, he has been with the Bruins for the entirety of his NHL career.
Marchand, the Boston Bruins.
He was there. He played for the Providence Bruins.
The Providence Bruins.
He was with the Providence Bruins before.
Marchand is our guy. Yeah, that sucks. That sucks for the Bruins. And
you know how many people in Boston right now have to go shop for a new sweater because the one they wear to the games is a Marchand sweater?
Marchand sweater. I need a new Bees sweater.
This sucks, man.
Yeah.
If you're a Boston Bruins fan, a guy that's been with your franchise for 15 years is now being shipped off to another contender.
Yeah. I wonder.
Ouch.
I mean, Marchand is. I mean, I'm sure he's happy to be on the Panthers are another team that's going to have a shot at a Stanley Cup, back-to-back Stanley Cups this year. So he can't feel too bad about the team he's going to. But he's probably feeling a little bit like, wow, after 15 years, huh? And I'm still arguably your best player.
I mean, he's the captain. So what?
Yeah.
You got to elevate your alternate captain now to put the C on his chest, presumably. That's wild. This is
wicked awful, OC.
This is a phenomenon in sports in general that I'm not a huge fan of. When someone is synonymous with a franchise and kind of at the tail end of their career, they do that. I mean, Boston fans, as spoiled as they are, they've seen it happen with a lot of their greats.
Yeah.
And now it's happening with this longtime Boston Bruin.
So he's been on the team for 15 years. So he was on their last Stanley Cup winning team then,
yes.
About almost 15 years ago. Yeah, that's a long time. That sucks for Bruins fans. The show's huge in Boston, by the way. We love a grievance coming from Boston. We love our Boston listeners.
All right, we got to take a break here. We're going to wrap up the show next. I will give away 2 tickets to the Offspring. I think this is our final 2 Offspring tickets. So if you're in my age cohort, you want these. This is your last chance. I'm going to make it an easy question. It'll be on our Dish Pros text line at 877-353-0700. And Scott Mitchell's filling in for Spence Checketts again today.
He is. He will be.
Is he in the building here, or is he going to be doing it from his other studio?
He will be at. He's on remote again at the Mountain America Expo Center.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Scott in about 10 minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 700, wrapping things up as we send you into your weekend. Topical trivia, 2 tickets to the Offspring, Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. We talked about DK Metcalf on the show today. He's requesting a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. We also talked about his production. The last 2 seasons, he has had the same number of receptions the last 2 years. What was that number? 877-353-0700. How many catches did DK Metcalf have last year and the year before? Both of those are the same. 877-353-0700. Final segment on the show brought to you by Burt Brothers. Time right now to spring into savings. Get your car ready for the season with $69 tires, $50 off service tickets, $79 alignments with the purchase of 2 or more tires. And don't wait because the deals won't last. Stop by your nearest Burt Brothers today. Burt Brothers does it better. Make sure you're listening live, or if you're not, ESPN700sports.com, the ESPN 700 app, your smart speakers, on YouTube at ESPN 700 Sports Utah, and, of course, the podcast form at ESPN700sports.com and wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're listening on the podcast, we say hello to the future, too.
Hello from the past. James, you got any big plans this weekend?
Yeah, got a fun little weekend.
Okay, a little Home Depot, a little Bed Bath & Beyond. What do you have?
Honestly, they're probably not Home Depot. Probably will be a Home Depot Lowe's trip in there.
Okay,
but yeah, right. I'm gonna watch. Not anything crazy planned. Gonna watch some college basketball. Get ready for the conference tournaments on the men's side. Watch some women's conference tournament. Duke Carolina tomorrow. Rivalry weekend in college basketball again because you got running Utes BYU too. How great would it be if the running Utes in this season where they lose their head coach, you can also say that we swept our rival. We swept
so good.
BYU. It'd be so good. Even if they don't make the tournament, I mean, I said it earlier in the week, the ultimate consolation prize, you can look at your rival who's going to the tournament, hottest team in the nation, and say, yeah, you can beat just about anybody, but you can't beat us. They get a chance to do that tomorrow.
Good luck to the running Utes in that effort. Here's the thing. I really need one of those blueberry cougar tails. I know I've mentioned it like 100 times on the show this week.
That Bill is apparently out on.
Bill is like too good for sweets, I guess.
I was like, wow.
Come on, Bill. The royal blueberry flavor. I need reviews. I need you if you're going down there, I need you to pick me up one.
You're not gonna be able to make the trip?
I don't know if I am. I'll try, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it down. And also, I don't know if I want to deal with the whole parking situation down there at a highly anticipated game.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of the cougar tail itself.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Jerem Jordan's going to have to virtually send one to us in our red and blue segment. Or maybe Bill will do it. Maybe Bill is serious. He's going to have one sitting on the desk here on Monday. And
it'll still be delicious, even if slightly stale.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to the show this week. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts, but it's not Spence Checketts, it's Scott Mitchell.
Speaking of Scott, we got him Monday and Tuesday in your chair too, right?
That's right. Yes.
You've got a PFL
Yes,
broadcast.
we got a PFL bracket reveal show happening, so I'm actually going out. How crazy is this? I'm actually going to be filming that bracket reveal show in the Pac-12 studios in San Ramon, California.
Really?
Yes. That was the studio that PFL rented. They have, the cameras, they have the graphics set up, they have everything they needed. So, going to be doing that in the Pac-12 television studio.
Wow.
Wild.
So Scott Mitchell Monday and Tuesday here on the Sean O'Connell Show. You'll be back Wednesday.
I'll be back Wednesday. We'll have a great time for the back half of the week. Everybody stay safe out there. We'll do it again next week. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN.